people, and even including myself. I mean, I saw myself thinking, wow, there was George Floyd living, breathing, walking upright. I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like to be a juror and seeing that and having to go through that every single day right now.
Absolutely. Sometimes you can only guess based off of their body language.
Yeah.
And in this case, especially, it's harder because we're just being told through somebody else's eyes what we're seeing there.
Yeah.
I would like to ask our guest, though, Mike Bryant, longtime attorney and expert. When it comes to issues with the jury, I mean, I'm sure, that's why they were so careful to make sure they had enough alternates and so forth. At what point would they, for example, cancel the rest of the day's trial for a sick juror or a juror that wasn't doing well? At what point would they have to excuse a juror?
Well, the first issue would be how severe it is. So if it's something that it's unclear whether it's going to be severe or whether or not the juror may come back, then what they'll do is they'll probably just delay it. If it's something that's really severe, and anytime you hear, right in this day and age, when you hear somebody's sick, you start worrying about what if somebody's got COVID and what if impact that's going to have. But if it's something really severe, then you start looking at the alternatives. You have two alternates on the jury. That's what you have the alternates for. Now, I was a little bit worried because of the length of the trial about only having two, but according to the size of the courtroom, that's what they were stuck with. So I think this early in the trial, being only the third day of the trial that's supposed to last 3 to 4 weeks potentially, the concern will be, boy, we want to hold on to before we go into alternates way too early and hopefully never get into alternates and we've got the 12 that we need.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And the judge was telling them even 2 to 4 weeks, but we're pretty confident that this is going to go all of 4 weeks, which is an extremely long trial. When it comes to mental health issues, have you heard of jurors being handled for issues like that? You're not related to getting a cold or a flu or something like that.
Well, I mean, you're asking regular, ordinary people to come in and make a big decision and to sit there and look at things that they normally don't look at. I mean, Williams is a good example he took this video and then decided, I didn't want the video on my phone. I didn't want to have this exist. So now you're having these jurors sit there and watch these things, and you're asking them to take this into consideration and pay attention to it. You'll have jurors that normally, if they saw something like this, would just turn it off. That's kind of what you had happen when you get the jury to begin with anyway. It's the people who turned things off and didn't want to watch this and didn't spend a whole bunch of time watching the videos that are on the jury, and now they're being asked to watch the things they may or may not have made a choice to not watch months ago.
Okay, and we're going to keep chatting, Mike, until they're ready back in the courtroom, but let's take a quick look back at some of the testimony of that key witness this morning.
We saw you standing there with your hands on your head for a while, correct?
Correct.
What was going through your mind during that time period?
Disbelief and guilt.
Okay. Why guilt?
If I would have just not taken the bill, this could have been avoided.
We also saw another individual get pushed by an officer, correct?
Correct.
And what did you do after that happened?
I was just trying to calm him down, tell him to stand back.
And so, Mike, as you heard there, the prosecution's doing a good job getting a lot of emotion into this testimony with these eyewitnesses. How much of that is allowed when it comes to testimony rules?
Well, when you put in evidence, it's not one of the things you get the jury's told in the jury instructions, both before and at the end of the trial, particularly when they make a decision, is they're not supposed to do it based upon emotion. So you're supposed to have cold, hard facts is what comes in. So the question is what the prosecution doing too much? And if there's too much, is the defense making a decision, or they are making the decision, why aren't they objecting to it? Why aren't they keeping it from coming in? Now, there's a couple of things. One is there's an argument that with them, the defense eventually going to be arguing that the crowd was unruly, and they did this some in the opening, that some of that evidence may eventually come in anyway. So that might be part of it. Second part of it is this is such a big emotional trial overall, and there's so many issues out there. Just get it out there, let the jury hear it, and then just move on from there at that point.
Sure.
With the 4-week trial, I don't know that emotion of one witness on the first day or the second day is going to carry the day one way or the other.
You kind of touched on something there that, this is a learning experience for a lot of people, the order of things. what can be asked in cross and then what can be asked when they redirect. If for example, this stuff about the unruly crowd came out, you hear this phrase, open the door. Just explain for our viewers what it means and why the order of things in a trial is important.
Well, the order is you direct a witness, and when you direct a witness, you ask them a question and they answer the question. You don't lead them at all. And then cross-examination, you get to lead, so you can come up with the answer as part of your question. Opening the door means that you had something that the judge has either ruled on or there's evidence that says this doesn't come in. So if someone says, I've never been a bad driver in my whole life, I'm the greatest driver of all time, that might let in their whole driving record for 15 speeding tickets, where normally you wouldn't be able to get those in because it isn't relevant to whether they were speeding at that moment. But once they say something or once some evidence has been brought in, then you can argue it opens the door to bring these other items in.
Okay, and so by that, when you look at the questions that Nelson asks concerning this unruly crowd, if he tries to later on show evidence that the crowd was unruly or testimony, somebody claiming that it was unruly, then these comments about it not being unruly and verging more into the emotion of everything, then that becomes more relevant. Is maybe the judge allowing it now because of that, or?
Potentially, the judge is not going to object on his own. Very rarely does a judge on their own. If they hear something really bad, they might jump in. But for the most part, they let the lawyers decide what to object to and what not to object to. So the decision's being made by each of the lawyers about doing the objections.
Right. Okay. And during the cross-examination of that witness this morning, Christopher Martin, the Cup Foods employee, defense attorney Eric Nelson kind of concentrated on the drug use of George Floyd and how his demeanor was as a result of that. And then that became something that in redirect the prosecution came back to. Let's first listen back to a little bit of that.
When you did interact with Mr. Floyd in the store, what was his demeanor like?
He seemed very friendly, approachable. He was talkative. He seemed to just be having average Memorial Day, just living his life, but he did seem high.
And so there, you heard that question didn't come during the initial questioning, during the direct examination. It came after the cross-examination during this redirect. And Mike, share why was that question important and why was that information in the answer important?
Well, I think the prosecution is trying to make sure that they're the ones who get out that he was on drugs, that there were some drug issues with Mr. Floyd, so they're not hiding it. So it's not a surprise issue that suddenly comes from the defense. And they're also trying to lay out there what kind of person George Floyd was at that time. When someone's interacting with them, during that time period, what's he like during that time period? And, there's nothing, it kind of jumps from there that there's nothing in that exchange that thinks eventually this guy's going to be a problem that end up going to be dead in a very short period of time.
Mike, I do have a question about just the emotions that we're seeing play out in this trial. I mean, we knew it was going to be emotional, but even hearing about the jury note just now that Lou had mentioned about that juror who had a panic attack this morning, I mean, there are a lot of feelings about this. And then even when the witnesses get on the stand, and I'm hearing a lot of people say that these folks who are on the stand are being flattened because of the system and the way it works. They can't tell exactly their full selves and full feelings of how they felt about this. Can you explain a little bit about that really quickly? We might have to toss back to the courtroom right now, but I want to get back to that question to you later, Mike. Thank you.
Sure.
Let's listen into the courtroom.
Just stand there for a second. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth? Definitely. Have a seat. And first of all, if you feel comfortable, we'd appreciate if you could remove your mask because it'll be easier to hear you. I'll keep my mask on so that we have as much protection. And we're going to test out the microphone and how it works with you. So if you could state your full name, spelling each of your names.
First name, Charles McMillian, Charles. Last name, McMillian, capital McMillian.
Thank you. Ms. Eldridge.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing today?
Okay.
Thank you for being here. I'm going to start with some questions about your background, and then we'll move on from there, all right?
Yes, ma'am.
So could you tell the jury how old you are?
61 years old,
And how far did you go in school?
3rd grade.
And what city do you live in?
Here, Henry County.
And you're in Hennepin County. Are you in Minneapolis?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to ask you some questions about Memorial Day, May 25th of last year. Do you live in an area close to Cup Foods?
Yes, I do.
And that evening on May 25th, were you driving by that area?
Yes, I was.
And what kind of car do you drive?
I drive a 2006 Dodge Caravan Blue.
Okay, is that a van?
Yes, ma'am.
So, when you were in the area of 38th in Chicago, did something draw your attention?
Yes, it did.
What was that? What did you see?
I was at the red light going south, and at the time I was going to go east on the 38. That was to my left, and when I got there to make a left turn, I see an interaction with a car with a man and with a police officer.
So I'm going to show you a map. If we could put up Exhibit 1, please. All right, so you were talking about where you were. Using this map that's up on the screen, could you just describe, you can actually use your, there's a little pen there, stylus pen, you can use that to sort of show the jury on the screen where you were and where you were headed.
Hard for me to see because I'm old. I can describe it better by saying because I can't hardly see what's going on.
Okay.
I was on the corner of 38th in Chicago.
All right.
To make a left to go east towards 42nd and Hiawatha. So I was right on the corner of 38th in Chicago.
So you were headed east on 38th Street, is that right?
Yes, which would be right here.
Okay, perfect. And you just made a mark at that intersection there where in the direction you were headed, which was eastbound, is that right?
Yes.
All right. And when you were headed down 38th, you said you saw an interaction with somebody and some police officers. What did you see at that point?
Well, when I made the left, I seen a blue. There was a Mercedes-Benz truck on the right side with a police officer standing at the door. So I automatically made a right turn and pulled over.
And what made you decide to stop and pull over?
Being nosy, just being nosy. I'm in the neighborhood. I'm a nosy person.
Did you want to know what was going on?
Yes, being nosy. That's what it was.
So when you first approached that area, you said an officer standing next to a blue Mercedes truck.
With the door open.
With the door open. Did you see what the officer was doing at that point?
No, not at the time.
Okay. So you said you decided you wanted to pull over, see what was going on.
Get out, yes.
All right. So did you drive up the street a little bit and then park?
Immediate park, got out.
Okay. So when you got out, what'd you do?
I walked across I went to the other side of the street.
All right. And would that be the Cup Food side of the street?
Yes.
Okay. So what'd you do on the other side of the street?
I engaged in what was going on by watching.
Okay. So what did you see from the Cup Food side of the street?
Basically, I seen the officer, was asking Mr. Floyd to get out the truck. And shortly after they got Mr. Floyd out the truck and they walked over to the sidewalk where they allowed, just walked over to the sidewalk behind Mr. Floyd's truck.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there. We'll just break it down a little bit.
Yes, ma'am.
You said you saw the officers getting Mr. Floyd out of the truck. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you say Mr. Floyd. Did you know who he was at the time?
No, ma'am.
Did you later learn that that man was George Floyd?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you saw, how many officers at that time did you see interacting with Mr. Floyd?
I want to say one at the time, then another one walked over to help him.
Okay. So tell the jury about that. What did you see the first officer do, and then what happened next? So we'll start from that point.
Well, when I got out of my truck and started watching, I basically just seen the officer asking Mr. Floyd to get out. And from that point on, I don't want to say, the other officer walked up to the truck where the other officer was. The other officer was on the other side, so he walked up to where the officer trying to get Mr. Floyd out of the truck. I said, and I heard a couple words, I don't know what it was, and they finally got Mr. Floyd out of the truck, handcuffed, and walked him down.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there. So first you saw one officer interacting on the driver's side of the car
Yes.
with Mr. Floyd. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you said there was another officer who was on the passenger side initially of that blue Mercedes truck. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then I think you're describing that eventually that officer on the passenger side came over to assist on the driver's side. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you said that those officers got Mr. Floyd handcuffed. Did you see that happen?
No, I didn't. No, I not recall it.
So what did you see while you were standing on the Cup Food side of the street happen at the next to that SUV?
Well, after that, I seen, because I was looking away, but then when I turned back and looked, I did see Mr. Floyd handcuffed. Then they started to walk him down the sidewalk.
So you didn't see the very moment he was handcuffed?
No, ma'am.
But you
No.
did see that he ended up in handcuffs?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you looking around you but not focused the entire time on, what the exact moment was that he was handcuffed?
No, I
Okay.
didn't.
So you said that he was handcuffed, and then you said they walked him across the street. So can you describe or show on the map what you saw happen next? All right, so if you could just put either a line or a mark where you saw them walking. Can we enlarge it? Is that possible?
It was on the right-hand side, but I can't see where that little restaurant is on the right side.
Okay, so let's take off the enlarged portion just for a second there.
It was a little small restaurant on my right-hand side behind the truck.
Okay,
That's what I'm looking for, and I can't see it.
all right. Would that be the Dragon Walk restaurant?
Yes, a little restaurant on the corner.
Okay, so was that where the officers that you saw walked with Mr. Floyd at that point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you said he was in handcuffs. Was Mr. Floyd walking across the street?
Yes, he was walking up the sidewalk with them.
And then what happened?
He said something about he said something. I can't quote right what he said, but whatever he said, they let him sit down.
Okay, and were you watching that part of the interaction where he was sitting down?
Yes, ma'am.
And where were you? Were you still on the cup?
I was still on the Cub pool side.
Okay, and I'm going to try not to talk over you, but if we could just wait for the question and then you can answer, and then I'll try not to
Yes, ma'am.
try to do the
Not
same
a problem. Thank you.
thing. Okay, just because we got someone taking it all down. All right, so you are on the Cup Food side. You see them sit him down at the Dragon Walk. Could you hear what was going on in terms of the whole conversation?
No, ma'am.
Okay, but you were watching what was going on. Is that
Yes.
right? All
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
Did they move again after that?
Yes, ma'am. They helped him guide up off the sidewalk.
Okay, and then after he got up off the sidewalk, where did they go?
They went north across the street at the red light, which would be going north through the red light.
So did they head toward Cup Foods at that point?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and where were you? Did you stay where you were, or did you follow?
I just went on down the sidewalk almost to the front edge of the Cub pool,
Okay.
to the stoplight.
And I'm going to put up, well, can you take this down, please? Thank you. Did we show you some pictures and videos from that day prior to your testimony in court today? Did you see some videos and pictures on a previous date when we met before?
Yes, I did.
All right. I'm going to put up, just for you but not for the jury, what we've marked as Exhibit 38, please. All right. Do you see that in front of you?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recognize yourself in that picture?
Yes, I do.
And is that what you looked like on May 25th and what you
Yes.
were wearing? All right. We would offer Exhibit 38.
All right, 38 is received.
All right. And we will publish that to the jury. All right. So now the jury is getting to see that's what you were wearing. That's what you looked like on May 25th. Is that right?
Yes.
And so it looks like you're walking down the sidewalk. You're talking about getting closer. Did you get closer at that point?
Yes, I was getting closer.
Okay. We can take that down, please. So after you see the officers walk Mr. Floyd toward the cup foods and you're getting closer, what do you see then?
I see them come through the intersection with Mr. Floyd, and I was just standing observing like I was doing. And when they came through the intersection, they went on to the car with him.
And when you say the car, what car are you referring to?
The squad car.
Okay. So they were taking Mr. Floyd to the squad car at that point? Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And was he still handcuffed at that point?
Yes, ma'am.
And was Mr. Floyd walking with those officers?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it just those two officers at that point?
Yes.
Did you know either of those two officers?
No.
Okay. And then did you continue to observe after they got to that squad car?
Yes, I did.
And what did you see then?
Just standing observing him, get him into the car, and as they get him in the car, I'm just paying attention like I always was.
And was Mr. Floyd saying anything at that point in time?
Yes, he was.
And were you engaging in a conversation with Mr. Floyd as well?
Yes, I was.
So tell the jury just a little bit about what was going on in that moment.
At the time I was engaged with Mr. Floyd, that the officer was, trying to get him in the car and everything, talking to him, and I was telling Mr. Floyd, just ply with him, get on in the car because you can't win, or something to that nature.
Okay. And before, as you were watching Mr. Floyd walk up to the squad car, he was seated down and then he was walked across the street. Any of those moments in time, did you see Mr. Floyd fighting or being violent with the officers from the moment he was taken out of the car until he was sat down and then walked across the street?
No.
Okay. And then you're describing what was going on, and he was handcuffed, you described that whole time, is that right?
Yes.
And then you're talking about them trying to get him into the car. Did we previously show you a video that showed your position and what you were watching, as well as what one of the officers' body cameras showed was going on at that moment? Did you see video of that on a previous date?
Yes.
And did that show accurately and fairly what you saw, as well as what you heard and what was going on with respect to Mr. Floyd at the squad car? Did that show what was happening?
Yes.
Okay. And just so I'm clearly describing it to you, I know you saw a number of videos. There was one of the officer's body cameras combined with a surveillance camera that was showing where you were standing. And that's what we've marked as Exhibit 39. And you said that video showed what you were doing and what you saw and heard. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, I'd offer Exhibit 39.
39 is received.
And we will publish that now. And does that show you walking by? Can we just pause it for one moment? Before we play, the top screen, does that show where you're standing next to the squad car?
Yes.
And can you just point yourself out on that top screen? And then on the other video that's embedded within what's shown here, that shows the officer and Mr. Floyd at the car. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We will clear that, and then we will continue to play. Thank you.
I don't want to win. I'm claustrophobic. You ain't gonna win. I'm claustrophobic. I got anxiety. I don't want to do. When I start breathing, it's gonna go off on me, man. Okay. Let me count to three. And I'm going in.
Pause it right there, please. All right, we're at 1807. Now, just to sort of summarize what's happened thus far, are you having a conversation with Mr. Floyd at that point?
Yes, ma'am.
And what's going on in that conversation?
It's going on a conversation that I'm watching, Mr. Floyd saying that he clasped over to the back seat of the police car. And I'm trying to get him to understand that when you make a mistake, once they get you a cup, it's no certain thing as being clasped over. You're going to go with them. And I was trying to get him to go.
Okay, and you were saying, is it your voice saying things like you can't win?
Yes, ma'am.
And why were you saying that?
Because I have had interaction with officers myself, and I understand once you get in the cup, you can't win. You're done.
Okay.
It's just the way I have looked at it.
So were you trying to just help him to...
Make the situation easy.
Got it. So you were trying to make the situation easier. And there were some comments about, I'm claustrophobic, and then I believe there was a response. Were you having a conversation with Mr. Floyd at that point in time?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you feel like he was hearing you and understanding what you were saying?
Yes, ma'am.
And like you said, you were just trying to make it easier and help. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at some point, again, we have this stopped at 1807. Did some other officers arrive?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you know any of the other officers who arrived?
Yes, ma'am.
And who did you know?
Mr. Chauvin right there.
And if you can point to him on the screen, you're pointing there. So you've made a mark with the arrow pointing to Mr. Chauvin. How did you know Mr. Chauvin?
5 days prior to this happening, I pulled up on the squad car somewhere in South Minneapolis, and I seen Mr. Chauvin, and I told him, like I tell all officers, at the end of the day, you go home to your family safe, and let the next person go home to their family safe.
So you had just met him in the community a few days prior, is that right?
I had seen him in the community prior to them, but that, the day I pulled up on him, I gave him the recommendation of what I said.
Okay, so you had seen him 5 days or so prior, had a conversation with him, but you had known him in the community before that as well, is that right?
I had seen him riding through the community, not knowing him.
Okay, so you recognized him as an officer in the community?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I apologize. I'll try to slow down. You try to slow down. We'll both take a breath. And then we'll
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm going to try not to talk over you. Do my best. All right. Okay. So I'm going to let the video play, and then we can pause it for some follow-up. So go ahead. Thank you.
You can't win. I'm not trying to win. I'll get on the ground, anything. I'll get in the car. He know it. He know it too, Mr. Officer. Y'all hear me? Don't do me like that, man.
In the car.
Okay, can I talk to you, please?
Yes, you get in this car. We can talk.
I am claustrophobic.
I'm hearing you, but you're not working with me.
God, I'm claustrophobic, man.
Get in the car.
Get in the car. Can you get me in the front? Please.
No, you're not getting in the front.
I'm claustrophobic, Mr. Officer.
Get in the car.
Okay, man, okay. I'm not a bad guy, man.
Get in the car.
I'm not a bad guy. Man. Please, officer. Please.
Sit.
Please.
Take a seat.
Please, man. Please. No.
Take a seat.
I can't choke. I can't breathe, officer. Please.
Fine.
My wrist, man. Please. I can't. I'm on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm going down. I'm going down. I'm going down.
Get in the squad.
I'm going down. I'm going down. I'm not gonna lose you. Bro, you gonna die of a heart attack. I know I can't breathe. Get in the car. I can't go with man. I can't breathe.
Take a seat.
Please, man. Please listen to me.
Is he going to jail?
Listen to me.
He's under arrest right now. Take him out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Get him down on the ground. Yeah, on the ground. On the ground.
My wrist. Right.
You got your restraint. Hobbled.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Grab
I can't breathe.
Thank you.
I can't breathe.
Stop moving.
Mama. Mama.
Yeah,
Mama.
it's in the,
Mama.
one of the front pouches
Mama.
on my right side bag.
Mama. Mama.
You're under arrest, guy.
All right. Oh my God.
So now you go to jail.
I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this. I can't believe this, man.
Can we stop it right here, please?
Mama, look.
Mr. McMillian, do you need a minute?
Oh my God.
Just take your time. Just know when you're ready.
We'll just give you a moment, Mr. McMillian. I'm not sure if there's water for you as well. Oh. If you need a break to get some water, let me know, and we can take a break. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you.
You okay?
Yeah.
I know that this is difficult. Can you just explain sort of what you're feeling in this moment?
I feel helpless. I don't have a mama either. I understand him. My mom died June 25th.
Hang on just 1 second, Mr.
Let's take a 10-minute break.
We'll take a little break.
Oh my gosh, Lou,
Just so
that
hard to
just-
watch. Absolutely.
So basically, we were watching video of George Floyd's arrest, and you can hear him screaming. You can hear him say he's claustrophobic. You can hear him screaming for his mom. And as we come out of that video, you see Charles McMillian with his head down, sobbing.
Yeah, so Charles McMillian, anyone that's watched the videos, they already recognize his voice. It's the voice of the older gentleman that you hear in the background saying things like, "You can't win, just get in the car." And eventually when the knee is on George Floyd's neck, you hear him say things like, just get up and get in the car. And so it seemed like they were leading up to that here. They were playing video from the surveillance camera, and then they had the body camera video of Officer J. Alexander King superimposed on top of it, synced up.
Yeah.
And that way you could see McMillian on the sidewalk, and then you could see the interaction between the officers and Floyd all at the same time there. And it obviously was incredibly hard for him to watch. He had a couple, really poignant things that he said prior to that. When asked why you were saying you can't win, he basically answered that he knows that once it's at that point, it's over. You just got to get in the car, and I mean that was a poignant bite, and then.
I'm just reading some tweets right now from people after that moment, which I'm still having to take myself some deep breaths. But this person's saying, Charles McMillian crying has me crying. So difficult for all these witnesses to live through this nightmare again. And someone else saying the trauma Mr. McMillian is reliving during his testimony is heartbreaking and real, which is so true for a lot of these witnesses that we have seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it goes back to this whole prosecution theme as well of the helpless feeling.
Yeah.
And the fact that these people were watching, and McMillian is the only eyewitness so far that we've heard from that saw the interaction almost from the beginning, from about the moment that George Floyd was handcuffed all the way through the end. I understand our guest is ready to weigh in. Mike Bryant, experienced trial attorney in the state of Minnesota for Bradshaw and Bryant. Mike, what are your thoughts from what we just saw?
Well, that was an interesting witness. You start off with he kind of added a little bit of levity to a really somber trial when he started talking about being nosy at the beginning. So I think he's a likable witness. I think most jurors will listen to him and think, boy, I like this guy as he's talking. And then as it went along and he started reliving it and they started showing the video, they showed what he looked like at the scene. And then when he started to get emotional and crying about what took place, there's an interesting part of this because what's going to eventually happen. So, I got to believe each of these witnesses, just like we heard from the young man this afternoon or this morning, they're all sitting there going, God, could I have done something different? Is there something I could have done that could have made a difference as far as it took place? Now, I doubt he thinks he could have done much with what was going on with the police, but he was trying, and he knows from the side he was at least trying to get this calmed down as far as the escalation goes.
And there is an age difference between him and most of the other observers there on the side, and just more life experience brings a different perspective than what we've heard so far. Mike, when we talk about trial strategy a little bit and what the prosecution is doing, they're obviously going through these eyewitnesses. Do you think they go through many more after this guy? I mean, this man, he is bringing such a strong. Do they want to quit with somebody who's strong like this before moving on to a different part of the trial, for example, or how do you think this goes?
Well, it's interesting on the timing. This would be the kind of witness that you would want to send the jury home with at night, as far as his testimony goes. I don't know. We haven't seen what's going to happen from here. But it'd be the kind of witness that you'd aim for the end of the day, or you'd aim for to try to get right at the lunch break so the jurors can go home and think about this, or go to their breaks and think about this witness for the impact that he had.
Okay, Mike, let's take a quick listen back at some of this poignant testimony that we just heard.
And what's going on in that conversation?
It's going on in the conversation that I'm watching, Mr. Floyd saying that he clasped over to the back seat of the police car. And I'm trying to get him to understand that when you make a mistake, once they get you a cup, it's no certain thing as being clasped over. You're going to go with them. And I was trying to get him to go.
Okay. And you were saying, is it your voice saying things like you can't win?
Yes, ma'am.
And why were you saying that?
Because I have had interaction with officers myself, and I understand once you get in the cup, you can't win. You're done. Okay. It's just the way I have looked at it.
So there's a lot more video to go. We don't know how far they're going to go with this, but where do you see this witness going from here, Mike?
I don't know that he's got to go much longer. We could go longer with him as far as what else he saw and complete his time period there. We may get into some issues about what he saw, what his experience was with what near the end of it as it was going along. So I don't know if we'll see more of that. But I mean, with what they've got already with the emotion, I don't know that you need much more than that with this witness.
Yeah, and Mike, I do have a question for you. It was a question I was trying to ask you earlier, coming out of this emotional, as that really is the word for that, that we just saw from Charles McMillian. But a lot of people frustrated, as I'm seeing online, on social media, that a lot of these previous witnesses weren't allowed to really voice how they were feeling, that they felt that the system itself was flattening these witnesses. Can you speak a little bit to that and why the court won't let them go beyond a certain point of what they're answering?
Well, how they feel isn't really relevant to anything as far as the trial goes. I mean, the trial is about whether or not Chauvin is guilty or not. I mean, that's what the trial's about. It's not a story or not. It's an all encompassing result. At the end of this will be the result, or this is what we find. It's going to be whether or not he's guilty or not. So as far as what an individual witness feels, that isn't under the law relevant to that, in particular, the question and what's trying to be proven in the case. Beyond that, the jurors get an instruction that says this isn't about emotion. So you can't, just because you feel bad or you feel good or you like or you dislike a witness, decide this is the way I'm gonna rule. You have to do it upon the evidence. So for both those reasons, things such as a person's emotions, plus the third thing is when you get too deep into emotions, then you get into issues about whether or not you then can attack their character, because they're going way beyond what they have the ability to say, and they get into the realm of being almost experts as far as witnesses go, and they don't have the background or they don't have the basis to be experts on things that they may be trying to give emotions about.
And right before that emotional moment, there was a tidbit that I almost forgot about here, and it was that Mr. McMillian said that he knew who Derek Chauvin was. Let's listen back on that quickly.
Did you know any of the other officers who arrived?
Yes, ma'am.
And who did you know?
Mr. Chauvin right there.
And if you can point to him on the screen, you're pointing there. So you've made a mark with the arrow pointing to Mr. Chauvin. How did you know Mr. Chauvin?
5 days prior to this happening, I pulled up on the squad car somewhere in South Minneapolis, and I seen Mr. Chauvin, and I told him, like I tell all officers, at the end of the day, you go home to your family safe, and that the next person go home to their family safe.
Now, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think sharing that little anecdote goes towards the prosecution, showing that these are people that were respectful to police. He was sharing something that he was showing a show of respect as a civilian to a police officer. Like he said, he shows all police. What'd you make of that?
No, it was interesting. That was one of the points you wonder if an objection. It's a
Mike,
tough.
I think I'm going to have to interrupt you really quickly. Court is back in session, so let's listen in.
Okay, sir. How you doing?
All right, sir. Yes, sir.
All set to roll?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You want to leave the mask on or off?
Oh, no, too hot.
Okay, understood. Ms. Eldridge.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Mr. McMillian. We have the video paused for a minute. I'm just going to maybe ask you some questions about that, and then we can move on from there, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So we have it stopped at 8:20:51. What did you see at the beginning of this clip in terms of the officers putting Mr. Floyd in the car? Can you just describe what you saw from your perspective?
Well, what I'm standing there looking at now, with where they are with Mr. Floyd on the passenger side of the car, with the trunk of Mr. Vane, other officers was trying to get some scrap, what you call hog tie. So that's what I'm engaging in right now. But
Okay. So in this image right now where it's frozen at 8:20:51, can you just point out where you are? And you said you're talking about the other officer, and I think you used the word hog tie. Can you just describe what you meant by that?
I guess he was looking for some scraps where they tie you up.
Okay. So where we have this video stopped, you were watching. Yes. Sorry. Is that better?
Yeah, you can stay right in the middle of that.
Okay. And I just want to make sure you can hear me and I can hear you. I have trouble hearing with all the plexiglass and masks, so I apologize. So could you describe what you're seeing at that point?
I'm seeing Mr. Floyd on the ground.
And is anyone else on the ground?
Will you repeat that again, please?
Yeah. Is anyone with him on the ground?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what do you see in terms of the other officers?
I see 2 officers on the back of him, and I see the officer in the front with him. And I see Mr. Chow, that's who in the trunk of the car.
Okay. And you're, I think you said Mr. Chow or Mr. Vang. Did you know the other officer who was at the back of the car? Did you know who he was, that officer at the back?
No, ma'am. I
Okay.
didn't know who he was.
Did you, and you don't know his name today, do you?
Chow, whatever. I don't really know his name.
Okay. But another officer that you weren't familiar with at that time?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And what about Officer Chauvin? You said you knew him, is that right?
I didn't know his name at the time, but I knew of him in the squad car and what I had said to him 5 days ago, but I didn't know who he was.
So you later realized that you knew
His name, yes,
his
ma'am.
name. Okay. All right. So I'm going to back you up a little bit. Before these officers were on the ground with Mr. Floyd, and there's an officer at the back, at the beginning of this clip, they were getting him into the car. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at that time, you were having a conversation with Mr. Floyd. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then were you continuing to have a conversation with Mr. Floyd throughout this process?
I can't recall what's out right now.
Okay. But did you hear Mr. Floyd speaking?
Yes, ma'am.
And then at times, were you also speaking to him?
I want to say yes.
Okay. And anything you said that's captured on camera, that would have been what you said in that moment. Is that right? Over the course of the time of your interaction with Mr. Floyd?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, what stood out to you about what Mr. Floyd was saying when you saw him on the ground?
When he kept saying, "I can't breathe," and when he said, "Mama, they're killing me," and they're killing me, that's what I kept hearing. "I can't breathe, Mama, they're killing me." Then when he started saying, my body's shutting down.
And was it your voice somewhere in the middle of all this saying, "Get up and get in the car"? Was that you?
Yes, ma'am.
And why were you saying that? What were you trying to do at that point?
I was trying to help him.
And how did he look to you after this continued, when you said he was saying, "Mama, and I can't breathe"? How did he appear to be to you?
He appeared to be in and out with the foam running out of his mouth.
And you said you saw foam running out of
Yes,
his mouth?
white foam around his mouth and stuff.
Okay. And you said in and out. What do you mean by that?
Talking, like,
Okay.
I don't know how, I can't really describe it, but he was.
Did you hear him talking at one point, and then did he later stop talking?
I heard him keep trying to ask them to let him up so he can't breathe, and then even I said to the officer, I said, man, he said he can't breathe. Have money. They said, well, if he keep talking, he can breathe.
Okay. Is it okay with you if I play this clip? Okay,
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
keep playing it if you're ready for it.
Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
All right.
Please, I love you.
You got hobble?
Just my kids, I love them. I'm dead.
Mine's in my side. It's listed. It's labeled. It says hobble. It's in the
I can't
top.
breathe for nothing, man. It's cold blooded, man. Ah, ah,
You're doing a lot
Mama, I love you. I can't do nothing.
Yeah, EMS is on their way.
My face is gone.
Well, do you want a hobble?
I can't breathe, man. Please, please let me stand.
No.
Please, man, I can't breathe.
Can you get up on the sidewalk, please? One side or the other, please.
My face skin up bad.
Okay, should we get his legs up?
Oh my God.
Nope, just leave him.
Oh
Just
my
leave him.
God.
Just leave him. Yep, just leave him.
Ah,
All right.
I'm dead.
The park's still sitting on the car.
Look at my face, man.
All right. And you were describing, you said a hog tie, or you saw an officer maybe going to get one. Did you ever see the officers use any kind of tie or other type of restraint for Mr. Floyd?
No, they did not.
Okay. I'm going to take this video down. And we're going to put up another one, but I'm just going to not play it. It's going to be Exhibit 16 that's already admitted. If we could just put that up on the screen. Yes, on the jury screen as well. I believe it's already admitted into evidence. So this is Exhibit 16, which is a video clip that there is, this is not playing. It's marked 8:20:05 is the timestamp. Do you see where you were standing in this particular image?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you just point yourself out? All right. And what do you see the officers doing from your perspective on the street?
I see Mr. Lane, it's the push officer right there that hold him down. They got his knee on his neck, between the neck and back, holding him down. The other officer really can't see around him, but look like they holding George Floyd down also.
Okay. So you talked about, did you see 3 officers with Mr. Floyd?
Yes, ma'am. I see 4 officers all together, but 3 of them is on Mr. Floyd, one standing in the back door.
And looking at this picture, can you tell which officer was which at this moment?
First officer is Mr. Chauvin.
Okay,
I don't know the other.
All right, so let's just stop right there. When you say Mr. Chauvin, can you tell where Mr. Chauvin is in this picture, or is it too difficult to see in this picture? All right, can you actually press that again if you're trying to point to Mr. Chauvin? Okay, so the officer that you've just identified with an arrow, is that the one you recognized as Mr. Chauvin?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then there were 2 other officers you described on top of him, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then a 4th officer standing at the back of the truck, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If it's okay with you, I'd like to play just a little bit of this video. Are you ready for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Go ahead. And this part of the video doesn't have audio, but does that show you in the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
And at some point, do you just step back a little bit out of the frame? Is that you walking off right there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. But during this time, you're watching what's going on. You're just not on the frame of this video. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So moving forward to 8:21:30, we'll just play a little bit of this here. Go ahead. And you come back into frame there.
Man, let him breathe, least, man. I can't breathe. I've been
Pause
trying
it
to
for
get
just 1 second. Do you see yourself back
Yes,
on
ma'am.
the screen? Okay. All right, go ahead.
So you breathe a little bit more. Put your hand on your neck, man. One of my homies died today with the back police car. I'm about to die to see. Why? Man, I can't breathe my face. Just get up. What do you want? I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my neck. I can't breathe shit. Bro, get up, get in the car, man. I will. Get up, get in the car. I can't move. I've been waiting the whole time, man. Just get up, get in the car. Mama. Get up and get in the car right. I can't. You can't get y'all the opportunity to get in, bro. I told you, you can't win. My knee. You can't win, man. I'm through. I know you're in there. My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Everything hurts. Get some water or something. Please. Please. I can't breathe all the time.
Shut up.
They're gonna kill me. They're gonna kill me, man. Bro, with your feet on his neck, man, you get out the
His nose is bleeding. Like,
yeah,
come on now.
That's raw right there with his feet on his neck.
Look at his nose.
You just see your knee on his neck.
Yeah, you got your feet right on.
Bro, you're a tough guy. You're a tough guy, huh? I say you're a tough guy. You're not even resisting arrest, bro.
His whole nose is
Fight with him? Bro, why
You can stop it there, please. So there's someone in that clip who says, you know, your knee on his neck, that's wrong, man, something like that. Was that you?
Yes, ma'am.
And there are also, before that, some statements about you can't win, get up and get in the car. Was that also you?
Yes, ma'am.
Again, was that what you were describing earlier, just trying to help with him? Could you describe what you were trying to do at that point?
Basically what I'm saying, he can't win because once, like I said before, once the police get the cops on you, you can't win. So I'm trying to tell him just cooperate with him, get up, if you can, get in the car, go with him, you can win.
And did he say, I can't, to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you understand him to be talking to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you were saying, you know, your knee on his neck, what were you concerned in that moment?
Yes, ma'am.
And why was that?
Because he's saying I can't breathe, you know, my stomach hurt. You know, he's saying things that maybe believe that he's in trouble.
When you say in trouble, what do you mean by that?
He's gonna die.
Did you stay, and I'm not going to keep playing this clip, we can take it down, but did you continue to watch what was going on?
Yes, ma'am.
And eventually did you see an ambulance come?
Yes, ma'am.
At any point in time, did you see Mr. Chauvin or any of the officers give any medical attention, help give CPR, anything like that for Mr. Floyd?
No, ma'am.
And did you see Mr. Chauvin or any of the officers get off Mr. Floyd before the ambulance came?
No, ma'am.
And while you were watching that, did your concerns increase over time, the longer it went on?
Yes, ma'am.
And why was that?
It grew because when the paramedics arrived for Mr. Floyd, I knew then in my mind and my instinct it was over for Mr. Floyd. He was dead.
After the paramedics arrived and then left the scene, did you have some additional interaction with Mr. Chauvin?
Yes, I did.
And prior to today, did we show you some video clips of that interaction?
Yes, you did.
And we've marked those clips as Exhibit 40 and 41, but reviewing those two clips, did they fairly and accurately show your interaction with Mr. Chauvin on May 25th, that date?
Yes, it did.
Your Honor, I'd offer exhibits 40 and 41.
Any objection? 40 and 41 are received.
And Your Honor, I'd ask to publish exhibit 40. And before we press play, one of these videos, exhibit 40, contains a composite, so a video showing you as well as Mr. Chauvin's perspective from his body camera. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's play exhibit 40. And is that you walking down the street?
Yes, ma'am.
Such a man, you got to have dreams from that night, bro. You gonna fuck around and shoot yourself. That's what you gonna do. That man gonna haunt you for the rest of your life. I know you know me from over. Yeah. That's why I said it. I ain't anybody. That was 2 weeks ago. Huh? Yeah. I just hate him to get put on his neck. I know you resent the body.
So that can be, we can pause it right there, but that can be difficult to hear. What was it that you were saying to Mr. Chauvin at that time?
I can't recall, but in my mind that I said to Mr. Chauvin in the act, I think it was like 5 days ago. I'm not quite sure, but I know in my mind what I did say to him. I think I said to him 5 days ago, I told you at the end of the day, go home to your family safe, let the next person go home to their family safe, but the dad got to look at you as a maggot.
Okay. And so your interaction continued with him in over these two clips, is that right? Did he move his car at some point?
Either that clip or the other clip. Yes, he did.
Okay. And then did you also have another conversation with him as well?
I think so.
And initially, did you remark about his foot on his neck or something to that effect?
I can't recall.
Okay, but if it's there, it would be in the videos.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And again, some of these can be difficult to hear. Can we put up exhibit 41, please?
Can you advise the fire department if they're still with you, they need to go to 36 Fifth Park to assist with the patient.
But I still respect who you is.
That's one person's opinion.
But no, I gotta get him. I gotta get him.
We gotta control this guy because he's a sizable guy.
Yeah, and I tried to get in the car.
Looks like he's probably on something.
But I'm just saying, you know, but no, I got nothing bad to say about you because you respect me, I'm gonna keep respecting you.
Right.
You have a good night. You go home safe to your family. Let other people do the same.
Okay, so there's a voice that's heard. There are two voices. Which voice is yours?
The one that when I told him I'm gonna respect him at the end of the night, you go home to your family safe, and that the next person go home to his family safe.
And whose voice is the other voice?
Mr. Chauvin.
And one of the voices was saying something to the effect of, I don't respect what you did, or something like that. Was that your voice or Mr. Chauvin's voice?
My voice.
Okay. And was Mr. Chauvin's voice the other voice on that?
Yes.
And what were you trying to do at that point in time when you were talking to Mr. Chauvin? Why did you feel the need to talk to Mr. Chauvin?
Because what I watched was wrong.
And did you feel it was important to tell him that?
Yes, ma'am.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Nelson. Sure.
Okay, really quick, Gia, before they start doing cross-examination, what we just saw there was Derek Chauvin's body camera video seen and heard for the very first time. And you heard him see, he was confronted there by Mr. McMillian and asked about the knee on the neck. And Chauvin's response sounded something along the lines of, we got to control a guy like that. He's a sizable guy, might be on something. But it's the first time that we've heard Derek Chauvin from his own body camera video.
Yeah, and it was pretty incredible. I mean, Mr. McMillian's exchange with him, because he did say, Lou, that he saw Chauvin 5 days ago and had a civil exchange with him just out and about in the community. And then 5 days later, this happens. And so he said he felt the need to say something because what he watched was wrong.
Yeah, in his experience before, his statement that he said was, something along the lines of, I respect you, we all have to go home at night kind of thing. And then there after watching the entire thing, he was kind of confronting him a little bit on it.
Yeah, and so the defense obviously trying to figure out what they want to do next. It looks like they might be going back right now, but yeah, after a testimony like that,
all right,
it looks like they aren't going back to him.
And if you could take the water with you,
we'll listen in.
that'd be great. The bottle of water that's right over there.
Thank you. Mean I'm done?
You are done. Thank you for coming in. Oh, sidebar? Okay.
Okay, so a little sidebar now after Nelson decided not to cross-examine. You can kind of tell that each time that he's decided not to cross-examine a witness, he's first talked it over with his assistant, Amy Voss, behind him, and Derek Chauvin, his client. And that very well could be him letting Chauvin know why he's not going to cross-examine. He might be telling him, that we're not going to get anything good out of cross-examining this witness, so it might be better for Chauvin just to let him go, because the damage was mostly there with the emotion as far as what it goes to the jury. And we could come back any second here, so we're not going to replay any of it yet until there is a true break.
Yeah, but obviously very emotional testimony, and it looks like
members of the jury,
now.
we're going to take a 20-minute break. Counsel are going to confer on possible ways that we can streamline some of the testimony that's coming up. So it's going to be a productive break for them. Take 20 minutes, and we'll see you back here roughly around 2:40. Thank you.
All right, Lou, so they are taking a break. Judge Cahill said they're going to work on streamlining witnesses and testimony. They're going to come back in about 30 minutes. But let's just talk about what we heard right now with this last witness, McMillian.
Yeah, so if we can we first cue up the part where we were seeing Derek Chauvin's body camera video and hearing the exchange before both of them. I'd like to listen to that one more time before we go to our guest. So that might...
Did you know any of the other officers who arrived?
Yes, ma'am.
And who did you know?
Mr. Chauvin right there.
And if you can point to him on the screen you're pointing there. So you've made a mark with the arrow pointing to Mr. Chauvin. How did you know Mr. Chauvin?
5 days prior to this happening, I pulled up on the squad car somewhere in South Minneapolis, and I seen Mr. Chauvin, and I told him, like I tell all officers, at the end of the day, you go home to your family safe, and let the next person go home to their family safe.
All right, and so that was him talking about his first interaction with Derek Chauvin just 5 days earlier and saying, hey, if you're safe, I'm safe, I want everyone to be safe. But there is that very, very intense emotional testimony that he had, Lou.
Yeah, and so we're going to play that now. We have it ready.
But I still respect who you is. That's one person's opinion. But no, I gotta get him. We gotta control this guy because he's a sizable guy. Yeah, and I try to get in the car. Looks like he's probably on something. But I'm just saying.
Okay, it's kind of hard to make out everything that's said, and I hope that we're interpreting that first statement he made about his interaction with Chauvin correctly. So again, he's confronting Chauvin on what just happened there. I think let's bring in our guest, Mike Bryant, experienced attorney. Mike, did you interpret that the same way, or tell me what you heard and saw there?
Well, it was interesting to see. At first, when he was testifying about something that happened 5 days before, I was wondering about why it wasn't being objected to, but I didn't know what was coming on the Chauvin, with the Chauvin video, from his video, because it confirmed that the guy did tell him that, or at least he's saying at the point that day that I told you this before, and here's an example of exactly what I told you. And so it's an interesting exchange that took place there, and it was confirmed by what was in the video, which I think makes him, when you go back, that he was a likable witness to begin with. He showed the emotion, and then at the end, he's confirmed with the video on what he had said earlier. Those are all things that make him a very, very credible witness.
Yeah, and Mike, I just want to make sure, how are you interpreting that first thing that he said? I don't want to misinterpret it. Was he saying that you get to go home at the end of the night because you're a police officer and other people don't get to? Or was he saying that he was offering him, a well wish that, get home safe at the end of the night?
He's fading out.
Sorry about that. Mike, I'll just repeat that one more time in case you're having trouble hearing me here. So actually, Mike is having trouble hearing Gia. Let's go back to Gia here for a minute. Gia, how did you interpret that way, or I just don't want to misread it here.
I interpreted it in the way that there was a civil exchange of, I want all of us to be safe. I want you to go home to your family at night, and the next day for other people to go home to their families at night. I just want everyone to be safe all around. And so I think we saw the anger 5 days later after he saw Derek Chauvin put the knee on George Floyd's neck, that hey, I had just talked to you 5 days ago, and we had a pretty respectful exchange, and this is what you're doing today.
Yeah,
and so I think he was pretty upset. So that's how I interpreted it.
That's what I thought too. I just didn't want to be wrong. Now, concerning Chauvin's body camera video, remember the body camera videos that have been released so far, just of the other 3 officers. And part of the reason is that at some point during the struggle with George Floyd, Derek Chauvin's body camera falls off. And so for the reasons that the other ones were released early, which had to do with the pre-trial motions that were being made, his camera didn't convey what those arguments were supposed to be. So it's kind of like legal reasons why his was not released earlier. So we're seeing some of what's on it now for the first time, and it makes me wonder if we're going to see it revealed in its entirety here pretty soon, because again, for the first time in this trial, we were shown a little bit of Thomas Lane's body camera video, now a little bit of Derek Chauvin's.
Yeah, and Mike Bryant is now ready. So Lou, maybe you can ask Mike Bryant about how he interprets these new videos that we're seeing.
Yeah, so Mike, both the new videos and the statement that was made concerning going home at night, I just want to make sure that you're interpreting it the same way that we were, or perhaps differently.
No, the way I heard it was exactly how you just explained it, was that we want everybody to go home. We want to go home, you want to go home. Yep. Everybody out here wants to just go home and be safe at night.
And how about the statements made on camera by Derek Chauvin, which were revealed here?
Well, the calmness in Chauvin's voice, it'll be very interesting to see how the jury hears that. That's the very first time, right there, really is the first time the jury gets to hear Chauvin. Now they see him in the courtroom. He's very attentive to what's going on. He's watching each witness. He's been playing a role in talking to his lawyer about what is happening. So the jury is aware of him, and they know he's there, and they're watching him. But that's the first time they heard his voice. And that'll have an impact on them from the very beginning. How do they interpret that in the way that his demeanor was at that time?
Okay, so looking ahead a little bit here, Mike, so we haven't seen the body camera video in its entirety, and like I mentioned, Chauvin's camera does fall off at some point. And so strategically, now that the jury's gotten a little taste of his voice and heard it for the first time, would it make sense to play more, or what do you think?
Without knowing what's on it, that's one of the choices the prosecution's got to make, is deciding, okay, how long do we believe we're going to be putting in evidence? And where do we want to put in, if they've got something on that video that they think is really a big deal, when do we want to try to put that in, and who do we put it in with? We just heard that the judge is talking to them about how to streamline what comes in. And that's having a discussion about how to get certain evidence in front of the jury in a way that doesn't waste the jury's time, but also you want to make sure the jury sees the evidence comes in so they don't see that things magically appear as far as evidence.
Yeah, and some context for our viewers here. Derek Chauvin never sat down and did an interrogation like you would see on TV and in other cases and in other trials. And we don't know yet if he's going to testify. So we don't know how much we're going to hear from him other than his voice being recorded contemporaneously by these cameras, right?
Correct.
So, is it too early to tell whether he would benefit by testifying or whether it would only hurt him at this point? Do we have to see more, or where do you think it's going right now?
Well, the hurt issue is whether or not there's something you feel like in cross that the prosecution could do to him. So I don't know that the evaluation is, could he hurt us by being on the stand? The question is, he doesn't have to testify, and has the prosecution put up enough evidence that the jury needs to hear from him in the defense's opinion in order to get their where they think the holes are across? Because the defense doesn't have to prove anything. They don't have to prove he's innocent. They just have to put holes in the prosecution's case. And does his testimony help with that? I would assume that is a discussion that started from the very first time they met and has been going along the whole time. Sometimes you get cases where the defendant wants to testify no matter what, and you get other cases where the defendant's sitting there and saying, I'll testify based upon this or based upon that, or we'll make that decision. We have to make the decision. The other thing is the prosecution can't call Chauvin, so no decision has to be made by the defense until the state's done with their case.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mike, I have a question about the defense. As we saw, had a sidebar. They talked amongst themselves about whether to cross-examine this witness, Charles McMillian, and they chose not to. How do you think that plays with the jury? Why do you think they did that?
Well, I don't know that they thought there was anything more they could get from him that would be helpful. You don't want to ever look like you're beating up a witness for undue purposes. And so they just determined that after listening to him, there wasn't anything they could take it in a direction that would make a difference for them. How it plays with the jury, I often in a trial this, particularly one that's expected to be this long, I don't know that a juror is going to be like, oh, I wish we'd heard more here. Or I wish there'd been more questions. They're probably at times thinking, boy, I wish there were less questions, but you ask them for foundational purposes, and you ask them because you need to make sure that all the bases are covered. But I don't know that it'll matter that much to the jury unless it was some witness that they're thinking there's this burning question that the defense should ask that they didn't ask.
Mike, what about the emotion that we saw from Charles McMillian when they played that video? I mean, what do you think that is going to impact this case? How do you think it will?
Well, it'll depend. In a trial that's this long, I don't know that in the end the emotion's going to play that big of a role. Day to day it'll play some roles. Day to day it'll play some impact on people who are out there watching it. There's a difference between the emotions, because there's the emotions that you feel at the time that are relevant to what you do, that are relevant to the issues of what type of crowd it was, that are relevant for those reasons. Emotions such as, I feel bad because of what eventually happened, or I feel bad today because I know of all the things that happened in Minneapolis after, those aren't even relevant to the trial. So it's pairing through that. Now, witnesses are allowed to be real as long as they are real, and jurors, as they sit there, listen to the witness and decide whether or not that's real emotion, whether or not that came across as very real, and those are all things that they evaluate the witness on.
All right, thanks, Mike. Now, we're going to circle back to something here that we heard earlier this morning. There was testimony from an employee, a young man, 19 years old, who worked at Cup Foods, and he was the one who received the counterfeit bill from George Floyd. And a couple things he said really got a lot of people talking. He said that he was sent outside by his managers to try to get George Floyd and the man he was with to come back in and handle the problem and pay with real money or address this counterfeit issue. And then the other thing he mentioned is that that he was going to have to take that money out of his own paycheck if he received a counterfeit bill. So just this afternoon, Cup Foods sent us a statement in response. They said that it is not Cup Foods' protocol to send employees outside. It was because we had a good enough relationship with him, George Floyd, and we felt like he didn't know it was counterfeit. And the statement goes on to say, also, we only tell employees that they have to pay for counterfeit bills if they don't check them as a deterrent. So we've never made an employee pay for a counterfeit bill, and that comes from Jamar Nelson. Jamar Nelson is a spokesperson now for Cup Foods. And so this isn't, I guess, relevant to the trial per se, but this trial is happening in real time here, and this business is responding in real time. Mike, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, this is a good example of the things that happen in trials. I mean, it kind of goes together with like yesterday's sidebar that they had after with the judge and the witness. These are all things that are outside of what the jury hears. So we hear it, people watching along outside hear it, but, as far as the trial goes, all of that doesn't matter. And the jury doesn't hear anything about it. And, it's one of those extra questions. I guess theoretically there might be jurors wondering about, does an employee really have to pay that money? But when it comes down to it, I don't think, and I kind of hope, I really hope that the jurors aren't worrying about that in the jury room at the end of this trial.
Sure, absolutely. So this witness we just heard from, Mr. McMillian, is somebody that we've been waiting for because he's one of the prominent eyewitnesses that you can hear and in some spots see on the videos. He's the one who keeps saying you can't win. And so there was a moment where he was asked actually a couple times, and the second time he expounded more on what he meant by that. Let's go back and take a listen to that.
Again, was that what you were describing earlier, just trying to help with him? Could you describe what you were trying to do at that point?
Basically what I'm saying to him, he can't win because once, like I said before, once police get the cops on you, you can't win. So I'm trying to tell him just cooperate with him, get up, if you can, get in the car, go with him, you can win.
And did he say I can't to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you understand him to be talking to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you were saying, your knee on his neck, what were you concerned in that moment?
Yes, ma'am.
And why was that?
Because he's saying I can't breathe, my stomach hurt. He's saying things that make me believe that he's in trouble.
When you say in trouble, what do you mean by that?
He's gonna die.
Again, pretty emotional testimony there. Mike, I wanted to touch on one thing. I mean, you started practicing law in 1991, and how much have these trials changed since then when it comes to technology? When you look at all the videos that have been used in the entire presentation of the case, can you just weigh in on the importance of video in this case and helping the jury follow everything that's going on?
Well, just the idea that you have cell phones that people can pull out and they can take video of, all the video cameras that you have that are sitting out there, just the technology that we're able to, to deal with. I mean, you look at something as simple as a sidebar. I mean, typically a sidebar would be when the lawyers or the lawyer's asked to approach or the judge calls them to approach, and you go up to the bench and you go off on the side and they run little fuzzy sounds so jurors can't hear it, and you talk about whatever the issue is. In this day and age now, suddenly they've got headphones and they're turning around and the lawyers are turning around in the other direction and the judge has his headphone, he goes to the side of the bench, and they have a sidebar that's really a distance, bar or a distance thing where they're all talking about different things as far as it takes place. The one thing I thought is, often in sidebars you have people talking over each other because you're all up there and it can get a little heated up there. And so with the headphones, I'm assuming, everybody's taking their turn so that you can be heard as far as it takes place. The other thing is there's an old kind of feeling that you walk away from a sidebar always like you won no matter what. The juror, you want to have a look on your face like it doesn't matter what happened, you could have gotten smashed up there, but you come back and you look like you won. I don't know how they do that in this circumstance, if maybe they turn around with a victorious look on their face. I don't know.
Yeah, Mike, and speaking of just kind of the new ways of doing things today, like Lou mentioned, so many new videos. So does this prolong kind of the trial now these days, or does it make it easier? I mean, what are the pros and cons?
Well, I mean, if you don't have the video, I don't think that this last witness ever is going to be able to testify about saying the things that he said. I mean, the video confirms that he said it. So there's no question about it. So there isn't this issue for the judge of wondering whether or not he really said it, and two, whether or not it adds to the testimony. Also, I think there's probably circumstances where it makes things longer, but I think in the end it makes things clearer. You know, the video that they used yesterday where they superimposed two videos, they showed the overhead and then they showed the ground video. That was really cool the way they were able to do it, because you were able to get different perspectives all at the same time based upon two videos.
And Mike, I want to take a moment to step back a little bit at the big picture of this trial. You know, we get a lot of people asking us, how long is this going to go? And we're thinking that this trial is going 4 weeks long. And so the prosecution's case is apparently being split up. And right now we're in this phase of hearing from all the eyewitnesses. At some point we're going to hear all this medical stuff, and at some point we're going to hear all this use of force stuff. In the big picture of the trial, how do you think it's going for each side?
Well, the defense right now is just kind of just sitting back and seeing how it goes. So for them, they got their opening statement in and they gave the views on where they think that there's holes that they can go into during the trial, and they're waiting to see what happens with witnesses. So for the defense, I think it's going along, and they're making their points when they can make their points. The prosecution is building their case. And like you said, they still have two big other parts beyond the eyewitnesses. They still have the medical part to explain what it was that he died from, and whether or not it was because of the actions taken by the defendant in the case. And beyond that, they have the use of force issue, because the big factor you have in here is that you have a police officer. And the biggest thing with the police officers are allowed to do certain things that other people aren't. Police officers are allowed to kill people at times because of stops, because that's what happens. And that's the last witness, you know, his testimony about you know, you can't win. A lot of people are going to hear that in many, many different ways. You're going to have some people that hear that to say, yeah, you can't win because it's the police officers and they do these things. You're going to have other people say, yeah, you can't win. Why are you fighting them? Just go along with it and let's not escalate this thing. So it comes down to these issues that the prosecution has to make sure that they're building a case that comes together so that they can do the conviction, because that, in the end, is they're trying to convict a police officer and show that a police officer acted outside of what a reasonable police officer would do.
That's a great point you make, Mike, about how different jurors, based on their life experiences, are going to take different parts of the trial together. In your experience, and you know, hearing from jurors after the fact, how much do they put these life experiences together? And for somebody who doesn't hear it the same way, is that kind of stuff shared?
Yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, that's why trying to watch jurors and see who's shaking their head or who's writing this note down or that note down, sometimes that's important, sometimes it's not. Their life experience, most jurors really work hard to get it right. I mean, even in juries that I've seen where they've done what I think is the wrong thing, looking at the evidence, they have, as a group, really tried to get it right. They exchange information. You do have people that hang on certain issues. And that's when I went earlier when we were talking, I think that first time they hear Chauvin's voice and the way he says it is going to have an impact on them on how they feel about Chauvin the rest of this trial, because that's their first time to see it. In the same way, that video showing Floyd before this happens going to have an impact on people as they look at Floyd and what they think of Floyd and Floyd's actions that took place before this.
Okay, well, it's kind of a guessing game to a certain extent when you can't interview the jurors at the end of each night, huh?
No, absolutely. But you in building the jurors, when putting together a voir dire, you are looking for certain things, and you're looking for ways that you can connect with them with certain witnesses.
Okay, and so as we look forward now to the rest of the day, you know, they're going to come back here any moment now, and they'll go till about 4:30 or so. What do you think that viewers should listen for and watch for, not knowing exactly who's going to testify, but just judging by what we've heard so far today and what we heard the last 2 days? What would your advice to the informed viewer be?
Well, I think the three things that I'd be looking for right now are what more video we're going to see that we haven't seen yet, because that, to me, has been the biggest, one of the most interesting things of the day is the video that we'd never seen before and what that added to it. The second thing is going to be whether or not, at the end of the day, the prosecution's trying to aim for a witness that ends the day at a certain level or a certain high note for them as far as their case goes. And then the third issue, I think, is going to be deciding for the defense, at what point are they going to take their shots or pick someone that they're going to kind of go into the issue of this crowd on. Because I don't know that they're going to have any witnesses that they'll call in their case that's going to give them, I don't know that they're going to have witnesses because they won't be able to call the other police officers. So I think they've got to decide if they're going to push that as an issue, whether or not they're going to find one of these witnesses to do that with more than what they tried to yesterday.
And Mike, speaking of those new videos that we're going to continue to see, we did hear, as we've mentioned, for the first time, Chauvin's voice after he kneeled on George Floyd's neck and McMillian came up to him and had that conversation. You hear that some people may say he seemed very calm. There's a person on Twitter saying he was cold-blooded, but obviously jurors are going to have different perspectives about how they heard his voice.
She just disappeared again.
Looks like we're having issues again, but
yeah. So Gia, as we wait for Mike to get his thing fixed there, as Mike kind of mentioned there, we are not going to hear in this trial from those other three officers, and that's significant in a couple different ways. And because they are also charged, they have a right not to self-incriminate. And we don't know how it would have gone if they were allowed to testify here. Would they throw Chauvin under the bus? I mean, I can guarantee if Chauvin's convicted here and they stand trial in August, that it sure would help their case if they put the blame on Chauvin rather than on themselves. And so it's interesting when you think about what this would be like if these officers were coming in, trying to explain themselves, and whether it could go one of two ways. They could try to defend Chauvin, and then the prosecution would be trying to poke holes in that as they question them, or they could put a little bit of blame on him to make themselves look better, and then that would really hurt his case if his coworkers were not siding with him. But that's just something that we're not going to know, and so those officers will not testify. We will be able to see their body camera videos and hear everything that's said on those, but we don't get to hear them testify, and we don't get to hear their interviews with the BCA where they were interrogated afterwards.
Yeah, and I'd love to get Mike's perspective on that in just a bit, Mike. But first, let's go back to the question I asked you earlier. So jurors are going to get different perspectives on how they heard Chauvin's voice for the first time today in that recording with McMillian when he interacted with him. So let's talk a little bit about when people say he was calm or he was cold-blooded. What did you gain from that video and how Chauvin's response was to McMillian?
Well, I was kind of startled in the sense of the way he was so calm after what had happened. A lot of people, a jury at the beginning of the trial, when they were listening to openings, had to have at some point started to create an image in their head of who Chauvin is, who Floyd is, even though Floyd's not a party in the case. He, as victim, is the person who was killed, is an important part of the case. They started to build those things. So when they suddenly saw a video, that either reinforced what they already thought about it, or it blew it up in ways. They came up with a different view on what Floyd is. The first time they hear Chauvin, and again, it may be the only time they hear Chauvin if Chauvin doesn't testify, that's going to be important to them if they've created an image in their head on the way Chauvin is, or if they're thinking, geez, I don't really know what was going on with this guy, and now suddenly, boom, they hear his voice talking to somebody, and kind of given the explanation of, well, you know, he could have been on drugs, and we were trying to control him, and so that is going to be one of those things that I think maybe a point where jurors will look back to, or in their deliberations will be important to them.
Okay, Mike, I'm just taking a quick look at the note from the pool reporter who's inside the courtroom this afternoon. The first note, I'll read one of them and then I'll let you react to that, and then I'll read the next one here as well. This person says that when they resume playing the graphic video this time, 3 jurors, one of them who appears to be the black woman who is the grandmother, and a 4th juror do not watch. They stare straight ahead. And then it says, Chauvin alternately takes notes and then looks up, his head tilted slightly to the right, and he intently watches the video of himself killing Floyd. That's what the reporter said in the note. So your thoughts on, just a little insight into what the jury looks like and what Chauvin looks like during that intense part of the testimony and the video being played.
Well, it's kind of tough to decide what jurors are watching, what they're not watching. I mean, I don't know if jurors somehow have eyes in the back of their head or what, because sometimes when you think jurors aren't paying attention to certain things, you find out later they really did know, or they really did intently listen to all that, or they really did take it in. Chauvin's, the way he's actively taking part in this trial, that'll be interesting to see if the jurors make anything of that or not. I mean, I personally think with what he's facing, with the charges against him, it makes all the sense in the world that he's active in his own trial. I mean, he's the one that's been charged, and you, as a defendant, I would assume you'd want to be part of it as much as you can be. If he doesn't watch it and looks remorseful, or if he doesn't watch it and looks like he doesn't care, I think that sends a worse message. So, I don't know how much time they spent with him, talking to him about, look, this is the way you got to be during trial, so that they see that you're watching everything and you're interested in all the evidence and you're a part of everything that took place. That's sometimes one of the discussions that can be had with clients.
What do you think he's taking notes on? Everybody's noticing that he's constantly writing in his notepad.
Well, you take notes on all sorts of things. I mean, I've looked at notes from clients. Well, you look at notes sometimes that are just doodles, that are just stuff that people write down because they are bored and they just want to do something. And other times they're writing down important notes that they're giving their defense or are giving to their counsel. In this case, who happens to be the defense attorney. Now, it's interesting because, any barriers that sometimes lawyers set up between them and their clients have been taken care of by COVID, because you have a barrier that's there. But it could be about the trial. It could be about all sorts of things. Who knows?
Okay. G and I were speaking a little bit about the fact that the other officers who are charged in the death of George Floyd will not be testifying in this case. And
right.
How does that create a different dynamic than what might have otherwise existed? How does that make this different?
Well, the reason why the prosecution wanted all of them together was so that they could have them all in the courtroom, and if somebody testified, they could have them testify in the case, and they could do everything all together. For COVID reasons, I think is probably the biggest reason, but could also have been other things that the Judge Cahill was looking at. It's decided that their case will be in August. We won't hear from them, and whether or not the jury will make something of that or have some opinion about that, I don't know. A lot of it will depend on, I guess there's always a possibility that one of them could plead out and testify during the trial, but I don't see that happening as of yet, or I don't see any signs or hear any signs of that.
And Mike, what are your thoughts on what was said during this trial with Derek Chauvin and the other testimonies that have really involved Officer Tutau? How does that impact the trial in August, or his trial in August, or some of the others? Will some of these testimonies be used then, or how does it work?
Well, the witnesses have to be consistent. So if someone says something now, that's the free look that the lawyers that have the trial in August get, is they're able to watch all of this. They're able to see, one, if Chauvin's convicted of something that you have aiding and abetting with. Because if Chauvin's only convicted of manslaughter, you don't get aiding and abetting with manslaughter. So they get to, one, see whether or not he's convicted of something you get aiding and abetting with as a charge. Two, there's been an attempt, prosecution's trying to bring third degree against them. They'll be able to figure out what happens with third degree by that time. And then third thing is they get a kind of free swing with witnesses, because they're either going to know exactly what they're going to say, or if they say something different, they'll be able to use what they say here against them. Because the testimony that any witness gives now is under oath. There's a difference between the statements they give, which aren't under oath. You don't swear that you'll tell the truth in a statement. You're supposed to, but you don't. You're not swearing that you're going to tell the truth. But when you're on the stand, you are swearing to tell the truth. So they can use that under oath testimony against them because they were under oath at the same time.
So one specific example from all of that. So Officer Thomas Lane was the one that twice said, "Should we roll him over?" And you can hear it on the body camera video. So when they play those, the jury will hear that. However, he was then interrogated by the BCA with his attorney present a couple days later. And then in that case, he explained it a little further, and he gave a little more context to why he said that and what he was thinking when he said that. That's what the jury's not going to hear. Is there a way to make up for that in this trial so that so the jury knows about that?
Well, no, not in a way that you can get it in, and so it's not seen as evidence that's admissible. So you can't bring in the evidence separate, from in that basis. So you'll get what he said on the video. I think for them, it's going to be the other police officers. I think it's going to be far more relevant that you had a crowd that was standing around saying, "Hey, this guy's dying." I mean, when you just heard that last witness saying, from what he's saying, I think he's dying. I think that's where it's going to go to the point of, if they could see it, why couldn't you guys see it?
There was one thing that Eric Nelson said in one of his questions yesterday, and I perked up when I heard it because I was wondering if it's something he's going to go back to as far as his defense. He asked about the term tunnel vision, and it was difficult to tell for sure if he was implying that maybe Derek Chauvin had tunnel vision, or if he was trying to say to the EMT firefighter witness that maybe she had tunnel vision. But then again, there was a couple of times where Eric Nelson is alluding to the crowd, and the officers are worried about the crowd around him, and he's alluded that he's worried about, or alluded that the ambulance did not arrive as quickly as they might have expected it. Are those all hints toward what his defense is here and what we're going to see in like a closing argument?
Potentially. It also may be setting up some things for his expert. I mean, they've got expert reports, so they've got an idea what their expert's going to say, but it may be laying foundation, for some opinion that the expert's going to give later on about, this person's action or that person's action.
Thank you so much, Mike. And court is back in session, so we'll go back there.
Your Honor, the state calls Jeff Rugel.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Let's see. And before you begin, if you could give us your full name, spelling each of your names.
James Jeffrey Rugel, James Jeffrey, Rugel, Rugel.
Mr. Slisher.
Can I take this off?
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Is it Officer Rugel?
Lieutenant Rugel.
Lieutenant Rugel. And what law enforcement agency are you with?
Minneapolis Police Department.
And how long have you been employed by the Minneapolis Police Department?
Just under 32 years.
And you indicated that you're a lieutenant. How long have you held that rank?
Since 2000.
Before you talk a little bit about yourself, you understand that you've been called here today as sort of a foundational witness. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Your personal involvement in this case is somewhat limited, and we're going to be offering various video evidence through you. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Right. And so what are your present duties with the Minneapolis Police Department, Lieutenant?
I manage the Police Business Technology Unit.
And what is that?
Myself and my staff basically manage the technology equipment, software, systems that officers use on patrol and investigations anywhere they're doing their job.
Tell the jury a little bit about some of these systems and software and tools that you use.
For example, we have a records management system where all of our police reports are kept. And so my staff manages that system along with a software vendor. We use surveillance video, for example, surveillance cameras around the city. We manage accounts for that, advise on where cameras should be, and make sure the system's working. The city uses body cameras for patrol officers and investigators. We manage the body camera program, including the video storage, which is through a cloud-based vendor, but all of the policies and stuff are enforced through our system administrators, which are part of my staff.
Fair to say, as a police department, the department generates a lot of data.
Very much, yes.
Both the written documents, video, audio, and all of these things need to be collected and stored and be able to be retrieved in a way that can be associated with a case number. Is that right?
Correct.
Before stepping into the business technology unit, I'd like you to share with the jury a little bit about your career at the Minneapolis Police Department. When did you begin?
I started in 1989 as a patrol officer, worked as a patrol officer for several years, was promoted to sergeant, and worked as an investigator doing gang cases, gun trafficking, and narcotics. Was promoted to lieutenant in 2000, and as a lieutenant I've served as a patrol lieutenant supervising a shift of officers on the street at a couple of postings. Served in this business technology job, and I also was the manager of our Strategic Information Center for about 8 years.
And I'd like to, for purposes of starting here, focus on that assignment with the Strategic Information Center. So could you please describe for the jury what the Strategic Information Center is?
It's what we call a real-time crime center. So it's a facility where both sworn law enforcement officers and non-sworn analysts work they're monitoring the police radio, they're monitoring cameras, they're looking at calls for service, and looking for ways to assist patrol officers in their job. So that could be anything from hearing that a patrol officer is on the way to an address on a particularly high priority call, looking up the history of that address and being able to send information to an officer so they know more about it before they even arrive. They also do a lot of assistance to investigations, looking for link analysis, trying to find suspects based on nicknames, all sorts of stuff. But they do that 7 days a week, 20 hours a day.
Fair to say, like any other business, things have changed a lot since 1989 when you started in law enforcement.
Yes, quite a bit.
We have much more sophisticated surveillance tools and data storage tools. Is that right?
Yes.
When did the Strategic Information Center open?
October of 2010.
What was your involvement in the Strategic Information Center at that point?
I was on the design team that helped to configure the way it was going to work. I was the initial and first manager of the center, so I wrote the standard operating procedures, the policies, sort of created it from the ground up, along with some supervisors that worked for me.
And you served to manage that center until when?
April of 2018.
And that's when you began your position with the Business Technology Unit?
Yes.
Okay. Within the Strategic Information Center, what I'd like you to focus on for the jury is the availability of surveillance video throughout the city. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the city has a network of public safety cameras that are placed at strategic locations all over the city. There's roughly 250, maybe a little more than that now. Typically in high traffic or areas where we expect to see a lot of activity. And those cameras are on 24/7. They're recorded all the time, and they can be monitored both at the Strategic Information Center and from places like precincts, and investigators often can monitor them or retrieve recorded video as needed.
And when you say monitor, you're talking about monitoring in real time.
Sure, you can watch them live. You can move them, if you will, pan, tilt, and zoom the cameras to zoom in on things that are of interest. Or if you know that there's an incident at a location where we have a camera, they can use the camera to try to see what's going on.
And then how do you communicate with other officers who may be on patrol and in need of this information?
There's a number of ways. The primary way would be sending what we call a switch message. So the squads have a computer in the car, and they're operating some software that allows us to send them sort of a direct message that flashes on their screen and can give them updates on the call or any other information. We can also get on the radio if we want to broadcast to a wider group. And then people have cell phones. We can call them if there's something more detailed than what you want to send in a message.
Okay. And that's helpful for monitoring in real time. You also mentioned storage and retrieval of said footage. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, describe, as the designer and former lieutenant of this Strategic Information Center, how the footage is able to be stored, retrieved, and, if possible, associated with a particular case number or event.
Sure. So we use a system called Milestone, which is our enterprise video management system. It's commercial software, but each camera feeds its images into Milestone, and they're recorded on a giant server that just holds video. They stay there for 14 days, and then after 14 days, the video expires and it just goes away. But during that 14 days, the staff at the SIC or investigators can go in and search by date and search by location. So, with the huge number of cameras we have, we can't monitor every camera all the time. There's just not enough people, and your eyes would glaze over. So, it's very common for an investigator to contact the SIC, the day after an incident and say, "Hey, will you go find the video from this corner from this time to this time and save it for me, send it to me." And so they will do that, check the area where the incident was, and get the video. It can be downloaded out of the system so that it's no longer subject to that 14-day expiration. And once it's downloaded, it's like any other video file. It's there as long as you have it.
And when you do, or an officer does, download Milestone video, and I think the jury's heard that term before already now, Milestone video. When they download the Milestone video, does that leave any kind of electronic trail so that you can know who made the request, what case number it was assigned to, and where the incident came from?
The Milestone video itself, the system doesn't have case numbers, but when downloading it, usually the file is named, including the case number. And then to store that file, rather than keep it on a person's local computer, they store it in our video cloud storage system, which is called evidence.com. And at that point, it's associated with a case number.
And the whole point of collecting the data, I suppose, is being able to retrieve it and use it both for proactive law enforcement, but also to review as evidence. Is that right?
Yes.
And so is this something that the SIC does, or officers assigned to that unit do in the ordinary course of business?
Yes, very much so.
And upon request here, were you able to review certain business records of the Minneapolis Police Department with which you're familiar to determine whether or not Milestone video was requested and downloaded in this case?
Yes.
And when I say this case, you're aware there was an incident that took place on 38th in Chicago on May 25, 2020. Is that right?
Yes.
And was there Milestone camera footage taken of the area on the date and around the time of the death of George Floyd?
Yes.
Are you aware that that footage was requested by a Deputy Chief Eric Fors in connection with this investigation?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury what he specifically requested?
I believe he wanted video from the camera at 38th in Chicago from about 7 p.m. till, I'm not sure how late, maybe 11 p.m.
And based on your review of the records, was that video footage obtained?
Yes.
And that was obtained by a Minneapolis police officer by the name of Dean Kriegel, is that
Yes.
right?
He was a sergeant at the SIC.
Okay. And the milestone footage with the incident that you just described, is that under Minneapolis Police Department case number 2020-140629?
Yes.
And that footage was exported and then uploaded into the MPD's evidence.com site for later retrieval, is that right?
Yes.
And do you know when, based on your review, the case was uploaded? That footage was uploaded?
Yes.
It was at 12:50 a.m. on May 26, 2020?
I believe so, yes.
And you reviewed this footage yourself, is that right?
I have.
When did you review it?
I actually reviewed it the day after the incident to see if there was video available.
Now, can the milestone footage, does the milestone footage include a date and timestamp embedded in it?
Yes.
And based on your experience using this footage, are the date and timestamps accurate?
They're very close to the same time as what would be on your phone or anywhere else.
Okay. And can those date and timestamps be changed or altered by the user?
No, one of the reasons we use Milestone is because when you download video using Milestone, it creates a sort of a secure package that includes a player and the video, and it can't be broken up, altered.
Okay. Now, we asked you to review some of this footage, and you're aware that we've had footage excerpted and marked and are offering it as various exhibits. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to draw your attention then to Exhibit 42. Were you previously shown a video that you were told would be designated Exhibit 42?
I don't know if I was told it would be 42, but I've been shown some video clips, yes.
All right. And you watched it, recognized it, and believe it to contain an accurate excerpt of the original Milestone video downloaded under that case number, is that right?
Yes.
That Officer Kriegel exported?
Correct.
Would you agree that the excerpt itself is a little zoomed in and captures various images from about 7:44 p.m. until 8:35 p.m. on the proffered exhibit?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, offer Exhibit 42.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
42 is received.
All right, and I'm going to request to publish Exhibit 42, but before we do that, just to explain to the jury, what they will be seeing is something with which they've already seen a couple of times, Milestone footage, I guess in that format, but there's no sound, is that right?
Correct.
And we're going to be playing a segment without sound or narration that will run from 8:08 p.m. until 8:14 and about 42 seconds. Right? And so I ask that that be published now. All right, we will stop there. Thank you. Now, Lieutenant, I'd like you to take a look at Exhibit 1, please. We're publishing Exhibit 1. And do you see the, familiar with the intersection here, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Right. It's 38th and Chicago.
Correct.
And you see the gas station marked Speedway?
Yes.
And do you see those small yellow icons, if you could zoom in, those yellow icons on the Speedway?
Yes.
Okay. What do those yellow icons mean?
They're cameras. One of them is our camera.
Okay. So, and if we could then just focus on the Speedway area, the two there. All right, so the perspective of that we were watching, the milestone video, is taken from one of the two cameras depicted in what we see in Exhibit 1, is that right?
Yes, the lower one.
The lower one on the corner of the store, that's why you catch the Speedway sign.
Yes.
Okay.
No issue.
Thank you. All right, if you could take that down, please. And now I'd like you to focus a little bit more on what you're doing these days in the business technology unit, all right? We know when you began in that job. Can you talk to the jury a little bit about what the business technology unit does with body-worn cameras?
So Minneapolis Police uses body-worn cameras. As of now, every sworn employee has a body-worn camera. My unit manages the program. So we are the primary point of contact with our body camera vendor, which is a company called Axon. When cameras are shipped to us, we set them up for use. We assign them to officers in the system. We make sure that officers are trained on how to use them. And we manage the back-end software, which is called evidence.com, where all the body camera footage is stored and retrievable and managed. And my unit also employs 2 full-time auditors who audit the body camera program to ensure that officers are following the body camera policy, that they're turning them on when they're supposed to, that they're doing the checks that they're supposed to, and that the system is working well.
And you're familiar with the Minneapolis Police Department body-worn camera policy?
Yes.
And this is something, obviously, in 1989, officers were not wearing body cameras. They weren't invented.
Right.
Right. When did body-worn cameras become more commonly used?
We started piloting them, I believe, in late 2015 or 16, and went with Axon after piloting several companies. The initial rollout was to patrol officers in 2016 and 17, and now we've finished rolling out to the entire department.
And Lieutenant, were you involved in the development of the body-worn camera policy and program?
Not so much in the development of it. I was at the SIC at the time.
In Minneapolis Police Department, body-worn camera policy is in the manual at 4-223, is that right?
Yes.
And at this time, I'm going to offer Exhibit 214, which is the body-worn camera policy 4-223.
No objection there.
214 is received.
And we're not going to publish that now because it's a lot of reading, but if you could please...
Thank you.
Sure. But if you could just give us a very high-level summary of what the body-worn camera policy requires.
Sure. So it requires that officers working in uniform always wear their body-worn camera, that they have it on in a standby mode whenever they're working, and that they activate it and record video when they're responding to a call or when they're meeting with members of the public or any other time there could be anything that we might want to review later. And so it also mandates that investigators who work in plainclothes wear cameras when they're doing certain enforcement actions like executing a search warrant and this kind of thing.
Some of the body-worn camera footage associated with this case doesn't, the sound doesn't kick in for a little bit. There's the image, but there's no sound. Can you explain why that is?
When the cameras are on but not activated, they're actually recording much like a DVR on your TV. When you press the button to activate it, that kicks on the sound and it saves the previous 30 seconds of video without sound. So the thought is that whatever caused you to turn on your camera would be captured because it was being recorded, and now the sound comes on when you activate it.
But there's safe to say there's nothing wrong with the camera and nothing wrong with the operator if the first 30 seconds is without sound. That's the way it's
exactly as it's supposed to work.
Okay. And then can you tell us a little bit about what these cameras look like and how they're actually physically attached to the officer?
Sure. They're about the size of a deck of cards, a little black rectangle. There's a number of ways to wear them. Most officers use the magnetic mount, which is basically a pretty strong magnet that goes inside the shirt, and then a mounting plate that goes outside the shirt, and then the camera attaches to that mounting plate. So when the magnet is engaged, it's affixed. A lot of them wear it either in their shirt pocket or up on high on the chest, which is where they're supposed to wear it to capture, a view of everything going on in front of them.
Right. And every officer is issued a body-worn camera. Is there a way to associate particular footage with a particular officer?
Yes, every camera has an electronic serial number, and when we issue a camera, we go into evidence.com and we find that officer in the roster and we say, this camera is assigned to this officer, and then that camera is linked to them until we remove that link.
And so much like you're able to do with the milestone, you're able to attribute particular footage to a particular officer at a particular time.
Yes.
And you've reviewed body-worn camera footage before, is that right?
Yes.
And is it generally a workable system? Does it capture what it's supposed to capture?
Very much so, yes.
And are you able to also associate particular footage with case numbers just like with the milestone?
Yes, so when an officer is responding to an incident and records video, after the incident, we call it tagging. They tag their video with the case control number from the incident. And that way, when the video is uploaded into evidence.com, it is tagged as being associated with that case.
How long is the footage retained?
Depending on the type of video, the minimum retention is a year. For any sort of evidence thing, it's 7 years. And then for significant incidents, it could be indefinite.
And does Minneapolis Police Department provide body-worn camera footage to other agencies upon request if they're investigating a case, or a prosecuting agency if they're using that footage to prosecute a case?
Yes.
How does the MPD physically provide that footage to the agency?
The most common way is to set up a partnership within evidence.com. So for example, the county attorney, who uses a lot of our video, they have an account. They're a partner agency, and so we can share with them within evidence.com to give them access. And then they log in to the same system we are, and they can see the video we've shared with them.
Obviously, there were several police officers involved in the May 25, 2020 incident we were talking about, and Minneapolis Police provided a number of body-worn camera footage to the prosecuting agency and the BCA. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And are you familiar with the specific officers who responded to the scene of the incident that occurred from 8 o'clock in the evening to about 8:30 that Memorial Day?
Yes.
And would you agree that those officers included Officer Chauvin, Officer King, Officer Lane, and Officer Tao?
Yes.
And upon your review, does it appear that each of the four mentioned officers wore body-worn cameras during that incident?
Yes.
And you were able to associate it with the same case number you recited earlier, is that right?
Yes.
And this footage was uploaded and retained by the MPD servers, correct?
Correct.
You viewed some of the footage involved with the various officers?
Yes.
All right, this time I'm going to ask you to review a series of, and to introduce and publish a series of body-worn cameras associated with particular officers in this case. And the first piece of footage that I'm going to ask you to discuss is, it's marked for identification as Exhibit 47, and it is the body-worn camera footage of Officer Lane. At this time, I will offer Exhibit 47.
Any objection?
Subject to what we've discussed, Your Honor, no objection.
With that exception, it is received.
And at this time, I'll ask to publish Exhibit 47. And please hit pause. And if you could enlarge and highlight the time and date stamp, please. Oh, then I will use my glasses. All right, sir, just to draw your attention to the upper right-hand corner of the footage that you're seeing here. Are you able to see the date and time stamp?
Yes.
Okay, and it says 5/25/2020.
Correct.
Right, and the time is expressed in military time. Is that correct?
Yes.
So 20:07 would be about 8:07 p.m.
Yes.
And some change here you can see on the footage. Axon body, that's just simply the brand of the body camera, is that right?
Yes.
And then there's some serial numbers on the footage as well?
Correct.
Okay, and so again, this particular footage, Exhibit 47, is associated with Officer Lane based on the serial number that you see, and the footage begins at about 8:07, 58 seconds. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, please continue publishing the exhibit. And this is that sound-free lag, right? There's no glitch here?
Right. 30 seconds in, the sound will kick in.
Gentlemen. Sorry.
The driver in there?
Blue bed.
Oh, which one? The
Okay.
blue one over there. Which one?
Yep. Just head back in. They're moving around a lot.
Pause. And the record should reflect that the time noted here is 8:09 and about 27 seconds. Is that right?
Yes.
Please resume.
Let me see your hands.
Damn, man.
Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Let me see your other hand.
Please. All right. What I do though? I'm so sorry. God dang, man. Man, I got shot this. Man, I'm so sorry, officer.
You got him?
Man, dang, man.
Put your hands on top of your head.
Man, I was last time I got shot like that, I was
Hands on top of your head. Hands on top of your head. Step out of the vehicle and step away from me, all right? Step out and face away.
Step out and face away.
Okay, Mr. Officer, please don't shoot me. Please, man.
I'm not gonna shoot you. Step out and face away.
I'm gonna get out, man. Please don't shoot me, man.
I'm not shooting you, man.
Please, man. I just lost my mom, man.
Taking one out. Step out and face away.
So sorry.
Step out and face away.
Please don't shoot me, Mr. Officer. Please. Don't shoot me, man.
Step out and face away.
Can you not shoot me, man?
I'm not shooting you. Step out and face away.
Okay. Please, man. Please. I didn't know, man.
Get out of the car.
I didn't know, Mr. Officer.
Right now.
Stop moving. Put your hand behind your back then. I'm not gonna do nothing. Face in the door.
Get into the room.
Oh, hey, you come back. Stay in the car. I'm sorry, Mr. Officer. I was on my knees, whatever. Oh, man. Stop resisting, man. I'm not. Yes, you are. I want to let you know, man. Stand up. Please, man.
Against the wall.
Oh, me?
Yes.
What I doing?
We're figuring out what's going on. Drop the bag.
Figure out what's going on.
Yeah, Adam,
What's the problem?
Said something to him. It ain't us.
we was getting a ride,
I
sir.
just got my phone fixed. It's my ex-man.
Adam on me.
This my ex.
Are you good?
He keep coming. Get my car.
That's it, man.
Adam, you can ask Mr.
You got
Adam
ID?
about us,
George
sir.
Floyd to jail.
You can ask Mr. Adam about me.
Do you have ID?
I'm on 38th to Chicago.
Man.
320 we're code for.
You can ask Mr. Adam about me, sir. I just came to buy the tablet, and when I bought the tablet, he didn't
Oh
work.
my
with whatever.
God. He didn't even do nothing.
Here you go, sir.
You have ID?
No, I
Sir.
Okay.
I just came over to get my phone. You see, I don't have a purse or nothing.
Mr. Adam
And my
knows
daughter
me,
is on her
man.
way to get me.
What's his deal?
I don't
Mr. Adam
know.
knows me, sir.
That's my ex. I don't know.
Why is he getting all squirrely and not showing us his hands and just being all weird like that?
Because he's been shot before. He don't
Well, I
wanna-
get that, but still, when officers say get out of the car,
going
is he drunk? Is he on something?
No, he got a thing going on. I'm telling you
What
about
does
the
that mean?
police. We have problems all the time when they come, especially when that man stood that gun like that. It's been one.
What's your first
He's
name?
pretty
His name
good.
is George Floyd.
What is it?
He's a good guy. George Floyd, she said.
Can you spell that?
I don't know how to spell George, sir.
Her name.
My name is, my name.
Your name,
Wanda
yeah.
Renee Hill.
Can you spell it?
S-H-A-W-A-N-D-A.
S-H-A-W.
Yeah, right, sir.
Yeah, he okay.
Mr. Adam.
Just put him in the car.
Mr. Adam.
Shawanda what?
Hill. Renee, R-E-N-E.
What's your last name?
Hill, H-I-L-L.
And your date of
If
birth?
y'all coming to get me, 127.75. Okay.
Okay, well, so here's the thing. Someone passed a fake bill in there.
Oh.
We come over here, he starts grabbing for the keys and all that stuff. Starts getting weird, not showing us his hands. I don't know what's going on, so you're coming out of the car. So just hang tight right here. Stay right here, please.
Ouchie,
What
man.
are you on something right now?
I'm not, no, nothing. Because you acting
Yeah.
erratic. Man, it's
Let's go.
scared, man.
Let's go.
Yeah, man. Yes. Yes, I was just moving earlier.
Let's go.
Man, what up? All right, let me calm down now. It's feeling better now.
Keep walking.
Like, okay, now, oh, man. God, don't leave me, man. Please, man, don't leave me, man.
Here.
I
want to watch that car too, so get him in.
Stand up, stop falling down. I'm not to fall. Stand up. I'm not to fall. Stay on your feet and face the car door. Man.
You get a search on him?
No. Please, God. Can I talk to you, man? I just want to talk to you,
No.
man. Please, let me talk to you.
Mark, just make sure no one goes in it.
I hear you, but you're going to face the door right now.
Listen up, stop.
I was leaving. That's anything y'all tell me to do, man. I'm not a resistor, man. I'm not. You can ask him. He know me, you know.
Check that side.
God, man, I'm going to do nothing like that, y'all. Why is it going on like this? Look at my wrist, Mr. Officer. I'm not that kind of guy.
Other side.
Mr. Officer, I'm not that kind of guy.
Stop.
You please? I'm not that kind of guy, Mr. Officer. Please.
Face away.
Please, man. Don't leave me by myself, man. Please. I'm just claustrophobic. That's it.
Well, you're still going in the car.
Anything sharp on you?
I won't do nothing to hurt y'all, Mr. Officer.
Anything sharp?
No, sir.
Now you like a comb or nothing?
Nothing, Mr. I don't have nothing. Why y'all doing me like that, Mr. Officer? Please, crack it through me for me and stuff, man. I am claustrophobic for real, Mr. Officer.
You got him?
Can you please crack it for me, please?
Yes, I'm
Remember my
cracking.
name. Stay with me, man.
I will.
Please stay with me, man. Thank you. God, man. I didn't know all this was gonna happen, man. Please, man. I just want my hands free. I don't want to do none of y'all, man. Nothing.
You got it?
Inside of your pocket real quick on your shirt.
I'm listening. And I understand that people do stuff and
All right,
gotta
he's
move
good.
me.
This is guns. There's nothing worth it. Windows down, okay?
Please, man. Please don't do. Take a seat. I'm going in, Mr. Officer. I'm going in. No, you're not. I gotta go in.
Take a seat.
Grab a seat, man.
Man, y'all don't believe me, Mr. Officer.
Take a seat.
I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy, man.
Take a seat.
Y'all, I'm gonna die in here.
Take a seat.
I'm gonna die, man.
You need to take a seat right now.
And I just had COVID, man. I don't want to go back to that.
Okay, I'll roll the windows
No.
down. Hey, listen.
Dang, man.
Listen.
I'm not that kind of guy.
I'll roll the windows down
Please,
and you pull your
man.
legs in, all right? I'll
Y'all
put the air on.
stop. Look at that. Look at that.
Not even
Look,
listening.
look at it. Look at it.
We can picture it now while you're standing out.
Okay, man. God, y'all do me bad, man. Man, I don't want to try to win. I don't want to try to win. I don't want to win. I'm claustrophobic.
You ain't gonna win.
I'm claustrophobic. I got anxiety. I don't want to do that. When I start breathing, it's gonna go off on me, man.
Pull your legs in.
Okay. Let me count to three. Let me count to three and I'm going in. Please. Please, I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to win. I'll get on the ground, anything. I can't stand this shit, man. He know it. He know it. Okay, can I talk to you, please?
As you get in this car, we can talk.
I'm claustrophobic.
I'm hearing you, but you're not working with me.
God, I'm claustrophobic, man.
Come on over here. I'm going to pull you
Get
in.
in the car.
Get me in the front, please.
No, you're not getting in the front.
I'm claustrophobic, Mr. Officer.
Get in the car.
Okay, man, okay. I'm not a bad guy, man.
Get in the car.
I'm not a bad guy. Man. Please, man. Please. No.
Take a seat.
I can't choke. I can't breathe, officer. Please.
Fine.
My wrist, man. Please. I can't take this, man. I can't. I'm on the ground.
Getting in the squad.
I'm on the ground. I'm going down. I'm going down. I'm going down. I'm not going to breathe.
Bro, you ain't got a heart attack shit, man. Get in the car.
I know I can't breathe.
I could have won. Get my oxygen back. Not so breathe.
I just had COVID, man. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Please, man. Please listen to me.
Do you want to jail?
Listen to me.
He's under arrest right now for forgery.
I can't.
Okay, go look at what's going on.
Forgery for what?
Let's take him out.
Thank you.
Yeah, just when you get up the...
On the ground.
I appreciate that. I do.
You got your restraint? Hobble.
Jesus
Christ.
Thank you.
Stop moving.
Mama.
On my right side back.
Mama.
Get EMS go too.
You're the best guy.
All right. Oh my God.
Sorry, go to jail.
I can't believe this. I can't believe this, man. Mama, I love you. Reese, I love you.
You got hobble?
Tell my kids I love them. I'm dead.
Mine's in my side. It's listed. It's labeled. It says hobble. It's on the
I
top.
can't breathe for nothing, man. It's cold-blooded, man. Mama, I love you. I can't do nothing. My face is gone. I can't breathe, man.
Okay.
Please.
All right.
Please let me stand. Please, man, I can't breathe.
You get up on the sidewalk, please. One side or the other, please.
My face getting bad.
Here, should we get his legs up?
Oh,
Or
my
is this
God.
good?
Oh, my God.
All right. Hopefully Park's still sitting on that car. They were. He was acting very all shady like Sean was in there. I'm assuming so. He wouldn't get out of the car. He wasn't following instructions. Yeah, it's across the street. Park's watching it.
Please.
2 other people with
Please, I
him.
can't breathe. Please, man. Please, somebody help me.
You can probably step it up then. You got it?
Sir, showing you at 20, 21, and 25 seconds, so 8, 21, and 25 seconds. Based on your experience and training, do you have an opinion as to what that item is?
That's a body cam.
Please resume.
Please, man, somebody help me. Relax. I can't breathe.
You're talking.
You're talking fine.
Deep breath.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. My body's just tired of this. Relax. Man, I can't breathe my face. Just get up.
He's got to be on something.
What do you want? I can't breathe. Please, you need my dick. I can't breathe shit.
Get up, get in the car, man.
I will. I can't move.
That is.
Mama.
They found a weed pipe on him. There might be something else with it. Might be like PCP or something. Is that the shaking of the eyes, right? Is PCP?
My knee, my neck.
Or their eyes like shake back and forth really fast?
I'm through. I got the movie. My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Everything hurts. There's water or something. Please. Please. I can't breathe off of it.
Talking,
They will kill me. They will kill me, man.
Takes a heck of a lot of oxygen.
Come on, man. I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe. They'll kill me. They'll kill me. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
We tried that for 10 minutes.
Please, please.
We're going on the side. Okay. I just worry about the delirium or whatever.
Well, that's probably really down what's coming.
Okay, that's false.
It's hard to talk when you're there. Bro, but it's hard to talk when you're there. You're in a bum right now. You can get him off the ground, bro. You can get him off the ground. You get a bum right now. What are you doing, man? Body language is bogus right now, bro. You know he's bogus. You can't look at me like a man because you're a bum, bro. You're not in a position to rest right now, bro.
Yeah, I think he's passing out.
You're breathing right now, bro. You think that's cool? You think that's cool, though, right? What you
313 Washington Street.
That's all right, though.
Yeah, I mean,
Not so far.
my knee might be.
something like that. But I know.
Oh, come over here.
Up on the sidewalk.
Yeah, we need you to keep it different. Yeah, you gotta have them come on. Back off. Get off the street.
Roll him on the side.
He's not responsive right now, bro. Bro, look at him. He's not responsive right now, bro. Bro, are you serious? He's gonna Is he breathing right now? Check his pulse. Check his pulse. Check his pulse, Kyle. Kyle, check his pulse. Kyle, check his pulse, bro. Yo, check his pulse, bro. He's broken, bro. Don't get drunk, bro. What is that? What do you think that is? So you call when he's doing okay? You call when he's doing okay. You call what you do. You call when he's doing okay, bro. Yes, I am. Bro, you think that's okay? Check his pulse. Kyle, check his pulse. Check. The man ain't moved yet, bro. The man ain't moved yet, bro. Bro, you're a bum, bro. You're a bum, bro. You're definitely a bum, bro.
About 3:30, EMS at Portland and 36, they were advised to
Bro, he has not moved.
You advise what?
I'll call 3. Acknowledge that.
Okay, that's cool. Go back.
Not yet, we've given you their updated location. They're around.
Here we go.
Bro, he was just moving when I walked up. Bro, you can't get up. You can get back out.
Sponsor right now, or you guys might want to? Right now.
Are you serious?
Should we get in the car? Get another car just for crowd.
Let's get them on this.
In front of you, bro? Like what? Bro, he's not even fucking moving right now, bro. He's not even fucking moving, You just sit there with your head like, hey, bro, you a real man, bro.
You guys can get out of the way.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
Need this?
Let's go to 40th.
You want one of us to ride with?
Yeah.
Sir, drawing your attention then to what's been marked as Exhibit 43, which is the body-worn camera footage of Officer King. I'll offer Exhibit 43.
No objection, Your Honor.
43 is received.
Publish Exhibit 43.
Before they drive off, act like you. This is a fake bill from the gentleman.
The driver in there?
Which one?
That blue one over there.
Which one? Yep, that's right there. Okay.
Something like that.
All right.
Squad 320, we're going to be out with Minnesota BRJ, Boy Robert John 026 at 38th Street.
I'm right here, bro.
All right, I appreciate that, man.
I'm cool. Let me get over here, sir.
No, you're going to stay right there for me.
Okay. Just up, man.
Now you got one more back here.
It's a lady.
The lady?
Yes, sir. Female. Giving us a ride. Trying to get her.
It's her car?
No, it's his other friend car, sir. She was giving her and I a ride.
Yeah. All right. So it's whose car? Your friend's car, you said?
It's his friend's car. Her name, I forget. Her name is I forgot her name, but I know his co-worker, and he was giving her and I a ride. This young lady right here.
Yeah.
And I a ride.
Okay.
We were just waiting on him or whatever.
All right. You stepped here, or what stopped you here at Cup Foods?
I did business with Adam. I was trying to buy me a laptop.
All right.
And I did buy one, but it wasn't working.
Yeah.
So he gave me my change back. You can ask him. You can ask him.
Okay. Do you have your ID on you?
I can give one. How you doing, sir?
I'm good.
I'm just reaching your this.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I almost stay right here, bro.
Please,
Yep,
man.
I appreciate that.
Please. I didn't know, man. I didn't know.
But Adam knows me, bro.
Stay here. You take a seat in that car.
Yes, sir.
In the car.
Yes, sir.
Stop moving.
I'm not gonna do nothing.
Put your hands behind your back then.
I'm not gonna do nothing.
Face the floor. Hey, you come back. Stay in the car.
I get on my knees with him. Oh, man.
Stop resisting, man.
I'm not.
Yes, you are.
What's wrong, man?
Stand up.
Please, man.
Stand up
I
for
don't
me.
want to go back.
Stand up.
I don't want to go back, man. I ain't gonna do none of that wrong, man.
Come on, walk with me.
This is like
Walk with me. Walk with me.
my feet, man. God damn, man.
Stand up.
Why you doing me like that?
Stand up.
God damn.
Come on.
Man. I just want to stop doing it.
We're trying to get out of the street here so you don't get hit by a car.
That's it, man. I was looking, man. But I ain't doing nothing wrong. That's all I was
Take a
saying.
seat. Sit down for me.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Officer.
sit down.
Thank you, man. God.
Sit all the way down.
Yes,
Flatten your
sir.
feet out.
Yes, sir. I will. Please, man. Please, man.
You got an ID on you?
I got one at home.
All right, what's your name?
George.
George?
George Perry Floyd. I don't know what's going on. Man, that's it.
Spell it for me.
G-E-O.
Yep.
R-G-E.
Last name?
Floyd. Yeah, man. F-L-O-I-D.
F-L-O-Y-D?
Yes.
Date of birth?
And last time I got Tim, October 14th.
October 14th?
73. Man, I got shot last on the same way, man.
If you mind doing me a favor, just run this
Nah,
back
man.
for me. George Floyd. Thank you.
Man, he was looking for officer. I don't want no problem. I ain't even do nothing.
Man, you know why we're here?
Why?
We're here because it sounds like you gave a fake bill to the individuals in there.
Yeah.
You understand that?
Yes.
And you know why we pulled you out of the car? Because you was not listening to anything we told you.
Right, I didn't know what was going on.
You listen to us and we will tell you what's going on, all right? When you're moving around like that, that makes us think way more is going on than we need to know.
Right. And that's all I had was officer was.
Gotcha, all right. We're going to put you in the back of a squad, all right?
So, can I talk to you?
Yeah, we're going to sort all this out, all right?
Please, man.
That's your car key?
It's my sister.
Key fob right there?
Yes, sir. Man, I got one problem.
Yeah, I'm going to hold on to that for you, all right? Stand up.
Please, man. All right. Can I tell you? Because I was so messing with her. So I was like, right now, I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, and look at you still able to reach your side. You're making me nervous.
That's why I was feeling. I was looking at my wrist. Okay.
Yeah, I got you. We'll fix all that. We'll fix all that, but you got to walk with me.
Are
you on something right now?
No, nothing.
Because you acting real erratic.
Man, I'm scared, man.
Let's go.
God,
you got
man.
foam around your mouth, too?
Yes. Yes, I was just moving earlier.
Okay.
Man, what up? All right, let me calm down now. This is a little better now. All right, okay. Do me one favor, man.
And we're going to talk about that once we get to the car. Stop moving around.
Man. Oh, man. God, don't leave me, man. Please, man, don't leave me, man. Oh, please don't leave me, man.
Yeah, just unlock the door for me.
I just beat it thing.
Stand up.
About the phone.
Stay on your feet and face the car door.
Man. Please.
No.
Please.
Not yet. Keep the door open. Keep the door
I
open.
don't want to talk to you, man. Please, let me talk to you.
Man, you ain't really.
Please, man. I'm claustrophobic.
I hear you, but you are going to face this door right now.
Listen up. Stop. I'll do anything. I'll do anything. I'll do everything, man. I'm not a resistor, man. I'm not. You can ask him. They know me.
Check that side.
God, man, I'm going to do anything against y'all. Why is it going on like this? Look at my wrist, Mr. Olsen. I'm not that kind of guy.
Sit still.
I'm not that kind of guy. Please. I'm not that kind of guy, Mr. Olsen. Please. God. Please, man. Don't leave me by myself, man. Please. I'm just claustrophobic. That's it.
Got anything sharp on you?
I won't do nothing hurt y'all.
Do you have anything sharp on you?
Sir.
Not even like a comb or nothing?
I don't have nothing. Why y'all doing me like that? I'm please, back and forth for me and stuff, man.
Stand up straight.
I'm claustrophobic for real, Mr. Officer.
You got him?
Could you please crack it for me? Please.
Yes, I'll
Remember my
crack
name.
it.
Stay
I
with me,
will.
man.
I will.
Please stay with me, man. Thank you. God, man. I didn't know all this was going to happen, man. Please, man. I just want my hands free. I don't do nothing to y'all, man. Nothing.
All right, you get that inside
And I
in real
understand.
quick on your side?
I'm listening. And I understand that people do stuff and y'all don't know me.
Take a seat.
Okay.
Why are you having trouble walking?
Because that was my hands. We will. Please, man. Please don't do that.
Take a seat.
I'm going in. I'm going
No,
in.
you're not.
I gotta go in.
Take a seat.
Grab a seat, man.
Why y'all don't believe me, Mr. Officer?
Take a seat.
I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy, man.
Take a seat.
No, I'm a diet.
Take a
I'm a
seat.
diet, man.
You need to take a seat right now.
And I just had COVID, man. I don't want to go back to that.
Take a
I'll
seat.
roll the windows
No.
down. Hey, listen.
Dang, man.
Listen.
I'm not that kind of guy.
I'll roll the windows down and
Please,
you put
man.
your legs in, all right? I'll
Y'all
put the air on.
God, look at that. Look,
Look, you're not even listening.
Look at it. Look at it.
We can fix this right now while you're standing out
Okay,
here.
man. God, y'all do me bad, man. Man, I don't want to try to win. I don't want to try to win. I don't want to win. I'm claustrophobic.
You ain't gonna win.
I'm claustrophobic. I got anxiety. I don't want to. When I start breathing, it's going to go off on me,
Get in
man.
there.
Pull your legs in.
Okay. Let me count to three. Let me count to three and I'm going in. Please.
You can't win.
Please, I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to win. I'll get on the ground, anything. I get
in the car.
He know it. He know it too, Mr. Officer. Y'all hear me? Don't do me like that, man.
in the
Please.
car.
Okay, can I talk to you, please?
Yes, you get in this car. We can talk.
I am, Mr. I'm claustrophobic.
I'm hearing you, but you're not
man.
working with me.
God, I'm claustrophobic, man.
Get in the car.
Man.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull you.
Get in the
Please
car.
put me in the front. Please.
No, you're not getting in the front.
I'm claustrophobic, Mr. Officer.
Get in the car.
Okay, man, okay. I'm not a bad guy, man.
Get in the car.
I'm not a bad guy. Man. Open my nose. Please, officer. Please.
Sit.
Please.
Take a seat.
Please, man. Please. No.
Take a seat.
I can't choke. I can't breathe, officer. Please.
You're fine.
My wrist, man. Please. I can't. And I'm on the ground. I'm on the ground, y'all. I'm on the ground. I'm going down. I'm going down. I'm going down.
Get in the squad.
I'm going down. I'm going down. I'm not going to leave, man. Bro, you walked down a heart attack. I know, I can't breathe. Get in the car. I can't go, man. I can't breathe. I
Take a
can't breathe.
seat.
Please, man. Please listen to me.
Is he going to jail?
Listen to me.
He's under arrest right now for forgery.
I tell you.
Can we figure out what's going on?
Forgery for what?
Take him out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Get him on the ground. Yeah, on the ground. On the ground.
My wrist. Right.
You got your restraint? Hobble?
Okay.
Okay.
I can't breathe.
Grab that. Get him.
Jesus. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Thank you.
I can't breathe.
Stop moving.
Mama. Mama.
Yeah,
Mama.
it's in the,
Mama.
one of the front pouches.
Mama.
On my right side bag.
Mama. Mama.
You're the arrest guy.
All right. All right. Oh my God.
So now you go to
I
jail.
can't believe this. I can't believe this.
No further.
I can't believe this. I can't believe this, man. Mama, I love you. Reese, I love you.
You got hobble?
Tell my kids I love
I'm
them.
grabbing it.
I'm dead.
Mine's in my side. It's listed. It's labeled. It says hobble. It's in the
I can't
top.
breathe for nothing, man. It's cold blooded, man. Ah, ah,
You're doing a lot of
Mama, I love you. I can't do nothing.
Yeah, EMS is on their way.
My face is gone.
Well, do you want to hobble?
I can't breathe, man. Please. Please let me stay in.
No.
Please, man, I can't breathe.
Get up on the sidewalk, please. One side or the other, please.
My face getting bad.
Okay, should we get his legs up?
Oh my God.
Nope, just leave him.
Oh
Just
my
leave him.
God.
Leave him. Yep, just leave him.
All right.
I'm dead.
The park's still sitting on the car there.
Look at my face, man.
I'm assuming so.
I believe so. We found a pipe.
He wouldn't get out of the car.
I ain't you this real. Please.
Yeah,
Across the
the
street, park's watching.
Please.
Two other people with him.
Please, I can't breathe. Please, man. Please, somebody help me.
Probably step it up then. You got it?
Please, man, somebody help me. Relax. I can't breathe.
You're doing fine. You're talking fine.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. My body's just tired this thing. Relax. Man, I can't breathe my face. Just get up.
What do you want?
I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my neck. I can't breathe shit.
Get up, get in the car, man.
I will.
Get up, get in the car.
I can't move. Mama.
Want a weed pipe on him? There might be something else with it. Might be like
I can't.
something.
I'm in.
Is that the shaking of the eyes, right? Is PCP?
My knee, my neck.
The eyes like shaking
I'm
back and forth really
through.
fast.
I'm through. I'm claustrophobic. My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Everything hurts. Get some water or something. Please. Please. I can't breathe.
You're doing a lot of talking, a lot of yelling.
They will kill me. They will kill me, man.
Takes a heck of a lot of oxygen to
Come on, man. I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe. They'll kill me. They'll kill me. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
We tried that for 10 minutes.
Please,
Roll him on the side.
stand put where you got him.
I just worry about the delirium or whatever.
That's fine, but yeah,
Okay.
that's awesome.
It's hard to talk when you're there, bro, but you can get him off the ground. You're in a bum right now. You can get him off the ground, bro. You can get him off the ground. You can get a bum right now. He enjoying that. He enjoying that shit. He enjoying that shit. He a fucking bum, bro. Bro, he's not resisting arrest or nothing. You enjoying it. Look at you. Your body language is changing. You fucking bum. What? Yeah, I already know that, bro. I trained with half of these bum ass dudes at the academy, bro. You know that's bogus right now, bro. You know it's bogus. You can't look at me like a man because you a bum, bro. He's not even resisting arrest right now, bro.
I think he just wants to know.
He's breathing right now, bro. You think that's cool? You think that's cool, though, right? What's your...
Chauvin, the closest available if you could start for an assault at next door to 2313 Washington Street.
That's all right, though.
Yeah, I mean,
Good so far.
my knee might be a little scratched, but
I think that's cool, though, bro. You're a bum, bro. You're a bum for that. You're a bum for that, bro. You get mad.
He's breathing.
Bro.
Don't come over here.
up on the sidewalk.
Yeah, we need you to keep some distance. Yeah, you got an ambulance coming.
He's not responsive right now. He's not responsive right now. He's not responsive right now. He's not responsive right now, bro. No, bro, look at him. He's not responsive right now, bro. Bro, are you serious? He's not just here with that on his neck, bro. Is he breathing right now? Check his pulse. Check his pulse. Check his pulse, Kyle. Kyle, check his pulse.
Suspect is sitting on the 20 to 30 years old. The victim is crying and the suspect has a gun pointed at a good end.
What is that? What do you think that is? You call what he doing okay? You call what he doing okay? You call what you doing? You call what he doing okay, bro?
Yes, I am from Minneapolis.
Bro, you think that's okay? Check his pulse.
Check his right.
Child, check his pulse. Check. The man ain't moved yet, bro. The man ain't moved yet, bro.
He's not moving.
Bro, you're a bum, bro. You're a bum, bro. You're definitely a bum, bro.
About 3:30, EMS at Portland and 36, they were advised to
Bro,
close
he
their...
has not moved, no.
I've called 3. Acknowledge that.
Copy, I was just giving you their updated location. They're en route.
Bro, he was just moving when I walked up here. Bro, you just got back out here. Bro, you just got back out here. Bro, this is 1087, bro. You're a bum, bro. Or 987.
212 and 222, the suspect is leaving and then he and SUV. Unknown, looks like it's going northbound. The victim is in the back of the bus. 12 copies, do we have a
Right now.
You know, he's mad. Yeah, look at that, bro. Are you serious?
Third precinct sergeant to acknowledge first 29, 26, and 46.
Let's get him on this.
And we're going to stop playing at that point. If you can take the image off the screen, please. Sir, the way the body-worn cameras work, they have an internal microphone. Is that right?
Yes.
And it's located fairly close to the officer, and you can hear, even with background noise, officers having conversations in conversational tones. They don't have to yell at each other. Is that right?
Correct.
There was also a body-worn camera footage taken from the camera issued to Officer 2 Tao. At this time, State offers Exhibit 49.
Any objection?
No objection.
49 is received.
And asked to publish 49.
Don't get in the car. He know it. He know it, superstar. Y'all hear me? Don't do me like that, man. Please. Okay, I told you to please.
Yes, you get in this car. We can talk.
I am claustrophobic. I'm
hearing you, but you're not walking with me.
God, I'm claustrophobic, man.
You in the car, man.
Whatever you
Get in the car.
Get me in the front. Please.
No, you're not getting in the front.
I'm claustrophobic.
Get in the car.
Okay, man, okay? I'm not a bad guy, man.
Get in the car.
I'm not a bad guy.
You ain't gonna win.
Oh, man. Please, please.
Take a seat.
Please, man. Please. No, I can't choke. I can't breathe, Bobby. Please.
You're talking.
Please.
Sit down. Fine.
My wrist, man. My wrist, man, please. Okay, let me lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground. Going down. I'm going down. I'm going down. I'm not gonna run, man. Right. I know I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
You're talking and you're oxygen not so breathe.
I just had COVID, man. I can't breathe. Okay.
We're just gonna have to tie. He's under arrest right now for forgery.
I can't.
Don't worry what's going on.
Let's
take him out.
Thank you.
Lay him down.
Yeah, just so we get it.
On the ground.
I appreciate that.
Bro, you can't win, man. Now you worry.
Right.
You got your, you guys got one?
Restrained.
Hobble.
Can't breathe. Okay. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Not moving.
Mama. Mama.
Yeah.
Mama. Mama.
One of the front couches.
Mama.
On my right side back.
Mama. Mama. All right. All right. Oh my God. I can't believe. I can't believe. I can't believe. I can't believe, man. Mama, I love you. Reese, I love you. Get my kids, I love them. I'm dead. I can't breathe for nothing, man. It's cold-blooded, man.
There you go. You're doing a lot of talking.
Mama, I love you.
Are we calling for EMS?
I can't do nothing.
Yeah, EMS is on their way.
My face is gone.
Well, do you want to hobble at this point then?
I can't breathe, man. Please. Please let me stand.
No.
Please, man, I can't breathe.
You got on the sidewalk, please. One side, please.
My face is bad. Oh my God. I'm dead. Look at my face, man. I ain't using this. Please.
Across the street, parts watching.
Please.
Two other people with
Please, I can't breathe. Please, man. Please, somebody.
EMS coming code 3.
Probably step it up then.
EMS
Please, man, somebody help me.
Relax.
I can't breathe.
You're fine. You're fine.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
He's talking, so he's breathing.
My brother just died, you see.
Relax.
Man, I can't breathe in my face. Just get up.
What do you want?
I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my neck. I can't breathe shit.
Bro, get up, get in the car, man.
I will.
Get up, get in the car.
I can't move.
I've been wiping the whole. Get up, get in the car.
Mama.
Get up.
Mama. I can't.
Up
in.
Is that the...
All right. My knee. My neck. I'm through.
I know you in
I'm through. My neck hurts. Everything hurts. Get some water or something. Please. Please. I can't breathe, officer. They will kill me. They will kill me, man.
Bro, you beat on his neck, man. You get off the
Come on, man.
Yeah, that's wrong right there, but it's beat on his neck, man. Yeah, you got your feet right on his neck.
I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe.
Tough guy. Tough guy.
What's that?
He's tough guy. He ain't even resisting the rest.
You know how long you fought with him? He's being held down.
They will kill me. I can't breathe.
This is why you don't do drugs, kids.
I can't breathe.
He's talking, so he's fine. Okay. He's talking, he's fine.
Bro, he ain't.
Okay. All right, we're done.
You circling
Okay, we're
like
done.
in a jiu-jitsu move,
We're done.
bro. You try
We're done.
his breathing right there, bro.
Okay. Okay, he's talking. It's hard to talk when you...
Ground, you been a... The rest are good.
Talking now.
It's bogus right now, bro. You know it's bogus. You can't even look at me like a man because you a bum, bro. He's not even resisting. You think that's cool though, right? What's your badge number, bro? You think that's cool right now, bro? You think that's cool though, bro? You're a bum, bro. You're a bum for that. You're a bum for that, bro. You getting mad.
I'm a firefighter from Minneapolis.
Bro, look, well, you should check on him. He's not responsive right now.
Back off!
He's not responsive.
Get off the street before
He's
you
not responsive right
Okay,
now.
then you know.
He's
Get off
not
the street.
responsive right now. He's not responsive right now, bro.
Does he have a pulse?
No, bro, look at him. He's not responsive right now, bro. Bro, are you serious? He gonna just let him sit there with that on his neck, bro? Is he breathing right now? Check his pulse.
Have this conversation.
Check his pulse.
Okay.
Check his pulse, child. Child, check his pulse. Child, check his pulse, bro. Bro, check his pulse, bro. You bogus, bro.
Don't do
you
drugs,
bogus.
guys.
Don't do drugs, bro. What is that? What do you think that is? You call what he doing okay?
Get back
You
on the
call
story.
what he doing okay? You call what you doing? You call what he doing okay?
Are you really a firefighter?
Yes, I am
Okay.
from Minneapolis.
Okay,
Bro,
then get on the sidewalk.
You
Show
think
me
that's
his
okay?
pulse.
Check his pulse.
Check his right
Child,
fucking
check his
now.
pulse.
Get back on the sidewalk.
The man ain't moved yet, bro. The man ain't moved yet, bro.
Okay, where?
Minneapolis.
Okay,
Bro,
okay.
you're a bum, bro.
Okay.
You're a bum, bro. You're
Check his
definitely a
pulse right
bum,
now.
bro.
All right, we'll stop publishing at 20:26:34. Officer Chauvin also had a body-worn camera, is that right?
Yes.
And based on your review, is that the box that we saw underneath the car at one point in the encounter?
Yes.
That is at Exhibit 44, offer Exhibit 44.
44 is received.
Request to publish 44.
It's a north side vehicle, Ilion Avenue.
Code 4.
Copy 320 South Code 4 330 you can cancel at 2012. Spot 310 copy yourself time for the property damage accident 1924 Chicago at subway.
I'm over there.
Copy.
Oh, shut up till we get there.
All right, if you can take that down, please. Now I'm going to be asking you about some items that we will seek to admit without publication at this point. Officer Pluger is a sergeant at the 3rd Precinct. You're familiar with him?
Yes.
He was also issued a body-worn camera, and his footage is there's footage that was captured of the incident that's offered as Exhibit 48.
No objection.
48 is received.
And then there's a number of still photographs that were taken from some of the footage that has been reviewed. At this time, I'm going to offer these without seeking to publish, kind of in a group. Offer Exhibit 57, still photograph from Lane's body-worn camera at 20/30/41. Yes, sir. Is it on your thumb drive? I think in the first batch. One moment, Your Honor.
I can just take a look at it on there.
Or you can bring it up and. 57 is received.
Offer Exhibit 58, Lane's body-worn camera at 20/30/43.
58 is received.
Offer 59, Lane's body-worn camera 20/30/47.
59 is received.
Offer Exhibit 60, Lane's body-worn camera 20/30/59.
60 is received.
Offer 61, Lane's body-worn camera 20/31/32.
61 is received.
Offer 62, Lane's body-worn camera 20/33/12.
62 is received.
Offer 63, Lane's body-worn camera 20/34/11.
63 is received.
Offer 64, Lane's body-worn camera 20/35/08.
64 is received.
Offer 65, Lane's body-worn camera 20/35/20.
65 is received.
Offer 66, Lane's body-worn camera 20/37/18.
66 is received.
Offer 68, still from Tao's body-worn camera. No, this is not military time, 8/32/59.
That was 68.
That was 68, Your Honor.
68 is received.
Offer 69, Tao's body-worn camera at 8:32 and 6 seconds. I'm sorry, 8:33 and 6 seconds.
69 is received.
Offer 70, Tao's body-worn camera at 8:33 and 20 seconds.
70 is received.
Offer 71, Tao's body-worn camera at 8:34/48.
71 is received.
Offer 72, photograph from King's body-worn camera at 20:33/57.
72 is received.
Offer 74, Lane's body-worn camera 20:38/22.
74 is received.
Offer 195, still photograph from defendant Chauvin's body-worn camera at 20:18/18.
195 is received.
Offer 196, Tao's body-worn camera at 20:18/30.
196 is received.
Offer 197, Tao's body-worn camera at 20:18/40.
197 is received.
Offer 237, photograph from King's body-worn camera at 20:17/45.
237 is received.
Offer 238, defendant Chauvin's body-worn camera at 20:18/18.
238 is received.
Offer 239, Tao's body-worn camera 20:18/40.
239 is received.
Offer 240, King's body-worn camera at 20:19/27.
240 is received.
Offer 241, Lane's body-worn camera at 20:19/53.
241 is received.
Offer 242, King's body-worn camera at 20:23/50.
242 is received.
Offer 243, Lane's body-worn camera at 20:26/33.
243 is received.
Offer 244, King's body-worn camera at 20:26:55.
No objection.
244 is received.
Offer 245, Lane's body-worn camera at 20:28:23.
No objection.
245 is received.
Now to exhibit 248, Lane's body-worn camera at 8:27:41.
No objection.
248 is received.
Yes. And then one final body-worn camera exhibit to offer and for publication. That's relatively short, Your Honor. Exhibit 45 is another segment of Defendant Chauvin's body-worn camera.
Any objection?
No objection.
45 is received. May be published.
Seek to publish 45.
You can't win. I'm not trying to win. Go on, get in the car then. I'll be on the ground, anything. Go on, get in the car. It's in car. He know it. He know it too, Mr. Officer. Y'all hear me? Don't do me like that, man. Please. Okay, can I talk to you, please?
So you get in this car, we can talk.
I am claustrophobic.
I'm hearing you, you're not working with me.
God, I'm claustrophobic right there, man.
Get in the car.
Get me in the front. Please.
No, you're not getting in the car.
I'm claustrophobic, Mr. Officer.
Get in the car. We're going to pull you in.
Man, okay? I'm not a bad guy, man.
Get in the car.
I'm not a bad guy. You ain't gonna win. Oh, man. Please, officer. Please. Please, man. Please.
Pull him in.
No, you take the seat.
Pull him in.
I can't choke. I can't breathe, officer. Please. Please.
Fine.
My wrist, man. My wrist, man, please. No, I can't take that, man. I can't. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground, bro. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm going down. 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 I'm not going to lose you.
And then we've reached the point where, based on your experience and observation, that the camera is now on the ground underneath the vehicle. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Mr. Nelson? May we have a brief sidebar?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're having a sidebar right now, and you know, based off of how this has gone the last few days, when the prosecution ends their questioning and the defense does a sidebar, they're often discussing. Well, actually, this is a sidebar where they're discussing with the judge and the other side. So they maybe are figuring out something about the timing, if there's anything else that's going to happen today before the judge breaks for the day.
Your Honor, I have no questions for this witness.
All right, Lieutenant Rugel, you just have a seat. There's some other things we have to deal with. But members of the jury, we're going to excuse you for the night. And so we are going to be in recess as far as you're concerned until roughly 9:15 or 9:30 tomorrow. Simply follow the sheriff's deputy's instructions, and we will see you tomorrow. seated. All right, Mr. Nelson, did you want to proceed? Record should reflect we're outside the hearing of the jury for an offer of proof. Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. Your Honor, as we discussed previously, the state has shortened certain body-worn cameras. I have, as an offer of proof, more extensive copies of both the milestone as well as the body-worn cameras. For purposes of the offer of proof, I do have a few questions for Lieutenant Rugel.
Right, you may proceed.
Lieutenant Rugel, in terms of the milestone cameras, during the course of viewing them, we see the camera turning.
Yes.
Someone was operating that camera at that time, correct?
Correct.
So someone was monitoring the camera and they were the ones that were turning it?
Yes.
And then when you saved that footage, or when the MPD saved that footage, that was not something that was happening. It was recorded, essentially, right?
Right. Once it's recorded, you can't change it.
Now, as far as the clip that we saw, you'd agree that that's a shortened version of the entire piece of evidence that was gathered by the MPD?
Yes.
Now, in terms of the software capabilities of the milestone camera, you're familiar with how that operates?
Yes.
And you would agree that the software that runs the milestone is different than the software that was used to show that clip?
Yes.
Okay. For purposes, Your Honor, if we could show the witness or even display it since the jury's not out. But even in terms, this is what the player looks like for the milestone system?
Correct.
And you are able to go through this, excuse me, you were able to scroll through the time that was saved?
Yes.
The pink bar at the bottom, would that indicate the time that was saved?
Yes.
And anything that happened prior to that where it's black, or subsequent to that where it turns black again, would be gone, right?
Yes.
All right. Now, you can also, this player also has some other capabilities such as zooming, right?
Yes.
So we can actually take this and move the camera around. Correct?
Yes.
So it has like this compass rose that allows you to manipulate where the camera is, as far, or where the image is enlarged within the original video.
You're zooming within the video now,
right?
As opposed to with the camera.
Okay. You also have the ability here to play it in different speeds. Is
Yes.
that correct? So I could play it at as high as 16 times the original speed.
Correct.
So it goes much faster, as we see on the screen.
Yes.
As well as we could slow it down to as much of quarter time, right?
Yes.
All right. So if I just put this back to regular speed, and then scroll, for example, you can actually zoom this in or zoom it out, as we discussed earlier.
Yes.
As well as manipulate the angle to see as much of whatever was captured within the field of the camera's vision, right?
Yes.
All right. And the total time that you gathered was from approximately 7 o'clock p.m., I believe, until you said about 11?
I think that's what it was, yes.
All right, let's just verify. And so, as far as, scan this over here. 10 p.m.
Yes.
So from 7 to 10 to 3 hours, right?
Yes.
All right. Now, with respect to the body-worn cameras, does the MPD also maintain the, we can turn the screen off, Your Honor. Does the MPD also maintain body-worn camera footage for the Park Police? Or does Park Police have their own unit that does that?
They have their own system.
In terms of the body-worn cameras, when an officer is on duty, there are certain circumstances under which they can shut them off as their, whatever the policy is, right?
Yes.
All right. And you're familiar with the policy?
Yes.
But there are certain times that officers are required to have them on as well.
Yes.
Right? And so an officer may, in the course of interacting with his partners or talking with various people, he or she may turn off the body-worn camera at a certain time, right?
Yes.
And then once the circumstances change and they're required to turn their camera back on, they hit it, and every time they turn it off and on, it creates a different segment of video. Is that
correct? With a buffer.
With a buffer, with the 30-second buffer each and every time.
Yes.
And so when we're watching the videos and we see that first 30 seconds, and then all of a sudden you see them hit it, and that's when the sound comes on. It actually goes backwards 30 seconds, right?
Right.
Okay, but sound would not be captured.
Not during the buffer, right?
The 30-second buffer. But so when an officer routinely handles a call and they go to save that body-worn footage, it's not always necessarily one continuous video segment. It may be several segments, right?
Correct.
And in this particular case, I believe with respect to each of the 4 officers thus far, there were multiple segments of each officer's body camera.
I know more than one. I don't.
Right.
Sure. Yes, I think so. I think so.
I'm not. I could look and give you the specific numbers, but so if we look at a file folder that has Mr. Chauvin's body-worn cameras, and there were 3 segments, that would be representative of 3 times that he turned it off and on.
Yes.
And they all would have the same case number, and each officer may have more than one segment of time captured.
Yes.
All right. I have no further questions for the purposes of foundation. Your Honor, for the record, I have a flash drive for the court's consideration that contains the totality of the 4 officers' body cameras. It has the totality of the milestone system. Let me ask you one quick question, Lieutenant. I apologize. The milestone camera, in order to operate that, it appears from the instructions you actually need to save it onto the desktop of a computer. Are you familiar with that?
To operate it?
To run that player?
You mean downloaded video?
Yes.
To someplace, yes. You need to save it.
Okay.
You can save it to a thumb drive, and then we put it up into evidence.com.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is, like, when I get it, I got a specific instruction that I had to save it on my desktop in order to run the player. Have you heard that?
I believe I've run them from a thumb drive.
Okay. I wasn't able to do that.
Okay.
So for the court's consideration, I would suggest copying. You may find it easier to run the milestone if you save it onto your desktop. I would note, Your Honor, and I don't know if the state is intending to object as on foundational purposes, but it is the defendant's intent to call Peter Chang, the Minneapolis Park Police officer. On the thumb drive also is Peter Chang's body-worn cameras. If there are foundational objections, I would appreciate knowing that. Alternatively, you may want to view that if there are admissibility objections.
You can object on foundation grounds?
I don't anticipate that, Your Honor. Let me review the issue, but I don't see a reason to object on foundational grounds, but substantively, there will be some objections.
All right, and when do you want to deal with this? Is for your case, correct?
It is for experts, both with respect to use of force considerations as well as medical issues.
All right. When would you like to actually argue this? Tomorrow morning, or
is today Wednesday?
Thursday or Friday is fine with me.
Could we do it Friday morning, Your Honor?
Sure.
And then
Let's do that Friday at 9 a.m. then.
at 9 on Friday.
Yes. I don't think it should take longer than that. Okay. Anything else for the record, though, before we adjourn?
Only that I'll offer the thumb drive as a court exhibit for purposes of consideration.
Yeah, we'll mark it as a court exhibit, essentially for an in-camera review or as an offer of proof pursuant to the motion to admit the entire.
And Your Honor, then just for the record, I think that this was initially posed as an objection to our exhibit, and you received that those exhibits subject to that objection. It seems that this is more of an affirmative offer in his case, and so I'd ask the court to overrule the objection and receive all of the exhibits we've offered today substantively.
With respect to the objection that I did make earlier, it was just to note I have no objection to the court receiving those items formally, but I would also be offering these.
All right. I'll receive all the exhibits that were provisionally received as formally received, and we'll deal with the admissibility of the new court exhibit and its components on Friday at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Anything else for the record?
No, not for the state. Thank you.
Lieutenant, thank you.
Thank you.
You can step down. All right. We're adjourned until, do we need 9 o'clock? Let's do 9 o'clock tomorrow just in case any motions pop up in the meantime. 9 o'clock tomorrow, 9:30 for the jury is most likely. Thank you.
Court is adjourned for the day. And Lou, what a interesting last couple of hours.
Yeah.
So let's dig right into it. So that was just kind of logistical things at the end there. They had already dismissed the jury. But let's get into some of the body-worn cameras. And for the first time, we saw some snippets of Chauvin's.
Yeah, I mean, this was really a whammy here for the jury to watch those back to back to back like that. Actually, back to back to back to back, because it was all four of them here. You know, for those of us who work in the news media, we had already seen the Thomas Lane video, the J. Alexander King video, and the Tu Tao video. But, you know, even we don't watch them back to back to back like that. This was the first time, though, that Derek Chauvin's video was played in court, and from what it sounds like there, it sounds like there's still one more clip that we have not seen in its entirety, because we saw a little bit of that interaction between him and that witness, Mr. McMillian, but we don't know for sure if that was the entire last clip, because you could see that his camera got knocked off during the struggle with George Floyd, and it fell underneath the police car, and I don't know if it turned off at that point or they just didn't bother showing us whatever came after that. But I mean, a lot to process here, and to the average person at home, I mean, this is extremely graphic stuff to watch. You know, frankly, we unfortunately, because of FCC rules, had to bring the sound down when curse words were being used, but besides that, I mean, we're letting everybody see, for the benefit of transparency, what the jury is seeing here.
Yeah, and for the jurors, too, some of them probably haven't seen all these videos.
Several hadn't even watched any. I mean, there were at least a couple jurors who said that they saw still frames of the Facebook video or a small portion of the Facebook video and had never seen body camera video.
And while these are hard to watch, what the state is trying to do is give the jurors all the different perspectives, all the different vantage points from each officer.
Yeah, I mean, these are very important for the trial, and maybe that's a good spot to bring in our guest here. We have well-known Minnesota attorney Mike Bryant joining us today. We've been talking all day, Mike. First of all, first takeaways watching these body camera videos.
They were a lot to watch. To watch them all together like that and see the different perspectives, to figure out whose camera it was in each of the cases, and then just picking out little things as they went along, little things that were said, little things that where hands were, and the Tao video of the people on the sidewalk pleading and figuring out, you know, which one was the firefighter and what she actually said. And, you know, when you watched her and you watched the way she was, it was very consistent with the way she was on the stand. You watch the MMA fighter, and he was very consistent with the way he was on the stand. So those are all things that when a juror, I think, looks at him, thinks, wow, we saw the real person testify.
Absolutely.
And that all comes down to what we were able to see. I mean, and to watch, him plead the way he did, that's a lot. There's a lot there.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing here, if one of my colleagues could tell me in my ear if I'm wrong, but is this the Derek Chauvin? No, this is the Tao tape.
That's
okay.
Tao.
So we did watch the Chauvin tape for the first time. What was your takeaway from that?
Well, it shows at one point it shows where his hand is. He's got the hold with his hand on one hand, and then it looks like his hand's up on the tire with the other. So there's a bracing that's involved there. You also there's a couple of exchanges where all the officers are kind of talking to each other that you see in the different tapes. And, that's going to go more towards the whole idea of the aiding and abetting issue with the other police officers. But it gave you a lot of very up-close views on things. You got the exchanges that Mr. Floyd was having with each of the officers. So you got to see the different times that Chauvin talked to the other officers and what was said back and forth. At one point, they check his pulse. You get the exchange between the people and Tao talking about, why aren't you checking him more, or what's he doing? So there's all these exchanges that you get up close as they happen.
Right. So this is the Chauvin video now.
Yep.
Now that's playing. I guess the main question is, how do they go through all of that stuff now? Do they queue up the video again? And then since they can't question the officers who are in the video, who do they question? Like, how do they highlight all this stuff to the jury?
Well, I think you might see, first we're probably going to see it with the experts. We're going to see different things that are brought up. And what was very interesting was the end of the day stuff that the jury didn't hear. But the end of the day stuff where Nelson was talking about foundation he's laying for other videos that he's bringing in, and how he's going to bring in the Park Police video. So it sounds like there's more things that he's going to use through his use of force officer to talk about things that were done, why they were done, what was, what the police officers were doing at different times. So you're going to see it brought in different ways based upon the medical testimony, the experts' testimony, and again in the closings.
And Mike, I do have a question from someone on social media saying, why did they dismiss the jury when Nelson was cross-examining at the end there?
He wasn't cross-examining. He was doing what was, the judge had made a ruling about what evidence was coming in as far as the videos go. And Nelson was putting in the rest of the videos, so he was laying a record and foundation for what it was that he was adding to the record. And that's for appeal purposes, that's for potentially to bring back up with other experts, but it wasn't cross-examining of the person. It was just laying foundation for the extra videos that he had.
Okay, and Mike, do you foresee them then going to like a transcript or something like this? Because there's so much said here that no one, if they're not taking copious notes, can follow everything. So just once again, how do they bring some of the nuances out?
Well, it depends on what it is you're trying to pinpoint and how you're trying to pinpoint it. I mean, there's a certain amount of, by putting the videos in, you're trying to tell the whole story. But the reality is they're working on, the prosecution's working on convicting Chauvin. So they're going to find out what evidence is important for convicting Chauvin in this case. The defense is going to pick out things that they're going to point out to, that they're going to point to in the video, or they're going to point to that are experts. They're going to say, here's the reasons why what he did wasn't criminal as to a police officer. That yes, it did happen. Yes, it's sad that happened. But as to a police officer, these are the things that he did that were in line with what a police officer can do.
Okay, now one quick note on what was playing out in the courtroom while all this was going on. I have one note from a pool reporter who was inside the courtroom. Rodney Floyd was the family member who was inside the courtroom. It says that he shook his head from side to side and at one point glared briefly at Chauvin while it was being played, looked stoic and sad. Chauvin sat intently throughout, watching almost every second of the video throughout that. And so not a lot of notes of how exactly the jurors handled it. But again, you talked earlier, Mike, and let's just, we have about 1 minute here. You talked about how they try to end on a high note for the prosecution. What do you think about that?
Well, that's what they did. I mean, they brought these videos and they showed people these videos from the different angles, and they ended the day with everybody going home with a full view of what they could see in the videos about what took place. And they played very close to the end the video of the people on the street pleading for what was going on.
All right, thanks so much. Mike Bryant, you were a great guest for us today, and thanks for all your insight.
Thank you.
All right, so there was a lot that happened today, Lou. Of course, we're going to have much more coming up, and we're going to be here again tomorrow to help you through all of this as well. But Lou, appreciate your insight today as well, as you've been sticking around here for a lot of hours.
Absolutely.
And then right now we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with much more coverage on the Derek Chauvin trial and also more news. We'll be right back.